This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another edition, a game day edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Andrew Paterson, Michael Remis with you as the Jets begin a 4-game road trip in Columbus, Ohio tonight to take on Patrik Laine and the Blue Jackets. Will be all over it. Brandon Rewucki's going to jump on a little bit later on. We'll get his thoughts on the Jets hitting the road after shootout win against the Kraken and a big win on Saturday night to resume their schedule against the Chicago Blackhawks. Just 2 points back of the Dallas Stars for first place in the Central and the Western Conference. Ted Wyman's going to come on first, though, today. We got a lot to get to with Ted. Of course, I know people are already talking about this in the chat, about Freezer's report yesterday on what is going on with the Winnipeg Ice, or what isn't going on with the Winnipeg Ice, and that, of course, is the construction of a facility that was seemingly part of the requirements for them to move here, which is really sad because, man, this is an incredible hockey team that is poised to take a serious run at a WHL championship and the Memorial Cup. But we're really focused in on a couple things with Ted. CFL Free Agency, get Ted's thoughts on the lay of the land, the Bombers and the rest of the league, as well as the Scotties Tournament of Hearts with so much Manitoba flavor as that kicks off tomorrow out at the Sandman Center out west. And then a little later on, we'll have Dan Fink jump on as well. Moose played last night and are back at it on Friday and Sunday. And we'll have some tickets for those games as well. So make sure to stick around later on. We'll give away tickets today. We'll spin the wheel for tomorrow's game. And if you want to enter to win tickets for the February 19th game, which I believe is the Dylan Sandberg bobblehead game, go to winnipegsportstalk.com and hit the contest link, and you can enter to win there. We will hand those out on Friday as we get into the weekend, which I just realized was a long weekend. Right on. Louis Riel Day coming up on Monday. So you can all plan yourselves accordingly. I know it's cold today. It's going to get nicer tomorrow, at least for the weekend, before it maybe gets a little chillier next week. Hey, listen, just before we bring in Michael Remis and get this show on the road, got to thank the sponsors that make this program happen each and every day. Leading the way is Coolbet Canada, Princess Auto, our friends at Little Brown Jug, Not Autocorp, Coolbet Canada, Canadian Club, Culligan Water, Vita Health Fresh Market, Consolidated Supply, Wallace & Wallace, F Apparel, Royal Sports, Boston Pizza, Manitoba Battery, and, of course, Nick and Nicky in the Nick and Nicky DQ Group. Michael Remis, what's going on? How are you?
Us counting down to another Winnipeg Jets game night. Columbus, early start. We talked yesterday with this upcoming road trip, kind of kick it up on easy mode. Looking at the, sorry Columbus, but I'm looking at the league standings right now, and they're at the bottom. And their goals against per game was, what was it here? 3.81. How as good as the Buffalo Sabres are at scoring goals, the Blue Jackets give them up at the same rate. So it's crazy to think that this is the team that embarrassed the Jets at home ice a couple weeks ago. But here we are, rematch, and looking forward to seeing how the Jets kick off this road trip.
Let me ask you this, and I'll throw this to the chat as well. Not that we need to spend too much time talking about the first game in December, but I remember I was on the way back from the Middle East, from the World Cup, when that game was being played. And I think I was in the Abu Dhabi airport, and I was following the game. And I'm looking at the tweets from everyone, and they were just saying that it was the most dead Friday night game they can remember. Patrik Laine scored 2 goals, and it was just a really uncharacteristic performance for the Winnipeg Jets. certainly at home this year with how well that they've played. And you knew that Laine was going to be up for a game returning home with maybe a few more eyeballs on him than normally happen at the Nationwide Arena in Columbus. But it did seem like that was a real off night for the Winnipeg Jets, Remo. And I would suggest that I would certainly hope that Rick Bowness will be quite mindful of that and remind his hockey club that, if you don't come ready to work and ready to do the things that they've done for the most part this season, wins are not guaranteed, even if you're playing against teams near the bottom of the standings.
Yeah, it was December 2, Columbus winning 4-1, which just seemed crazy at the time. The Jets were playing so well, and Columbus comes in, and who gets on the score sheet? Patrick Laine with 2 goals. And coming into tonight, Laine's a bit cold. You know how he's streaky, is hot and cold. He hasn't scored in the last 7 games. So I know the guys in Columbus think that he's due for one. He wants to score against his former team. And we'll see how it goes. He's actually playing on the second line tonight. He's not playing with Johnny Gaudreau and Boone Jenner. So I know they'll probably get some power play time, I'm sure. But we will see. See what happens here with the Blue Jackets and how they perform. They're fired up, Huss. They lost last game to New Jersey. They gave up a game-winning goal with 1.4 seconds left. I mean, for a team that, you guys see people on the podcast can't see your face, but for a team that's finding wins hard to come by, just avoiding that, or maybe it was great, maybe it was intentional because they're trying for the tank. So who knows? Although I don't know.
I don't think that was the plan. I don't think that was the plan when they started out this season, when they gave all that money to Johnny Gaudreau. Yeah. And listen, I mean, there is some interesting players on this roster. I mean, you mentioned that Laine is going to be playing with Cole Sillinger and the youngster Kent Johnson on line number 2. Johnson, a really, really talented young player. And this Kirill Marchenko, who I'll be honest, I do not know a lot about, playing on the right side, along with those guys. And I'm just looking at Marchenko has played. Look at these numbers. You want to talk about a Cy Young number this year? He's played 31 games. He's got 14 goals and 1 assist. He was a second rounder in 2018, and this is his first 31 games in the National Hockey League. He'd been in Russia up until last year. Started off the season with the American Hockey League Cleveland Monsters, was better than a point a game in the American Hockey League, and now 14-1 for 15 points on the season. But further down the roster, Sean Kuraly with Matthew Olivier and Eric Robinson on the third line. And there's Jack Roslovic, fourth line center right now for the Columbus Blue Jackets with Emil Bemstrom and Liam Foudy. Roslovic does not even figure into the power play right now. And I know there's a lot of talk about Laine. But, man, I kind of thought that Roslovic at one point, and actually throw that up again, because I guess that's a little different than what Daily Faceoff has, Remo.
Yeah, this is from the Blue Jackets official Twitter, so I don't know if Daily Faceoff has it different. They have Roslovic on the third line.
They just have the third and fourth lines ordered differently. But anyways, the reason I bring this up is for Roslovic. I mean, Jack, for his part this season, is actually fourth in scoring. He's been given a ton of opportunities, though, and still just has the 4 goals on the season and 28 points. And I think he really thought that coming home, he would be, more of a key player for Columbus. And you wonder what the future of Jack Roslovic is in Columbus and in the National Hockey League, considering the opportunities that were presented to him when he got traded there, and just the fact that it hasn't really clicked for him so far. Although he's played in just about all the games, he is somewhat productive scoring-wise, and I guess they could get a little bit of, some offense chipping in from one of the third or fourth lines. That would be a positive for a team that hasn't scored a ton, and certainly, as you mentioned, has had a very hard time keeping the puck out of their own net.
You mentioned Jack Roslovic. I was just looking through Frank Saravalli's updated trade board. I don't know if he's doing like one every day until the deadline, but he did have Jack Roslovic new on the list, coming in at 37. I think they're all competing now. It's like the Royal Rumble has, used to be like 20 man, then it's like 30 man. Oh no, we got the biggest Royal Rumble, 40 man. And now it's like, how many guys can you have on your trade board? He thinks, 45 people on the trade board. It's the biggest one out there. But he had 37 for Jack Roslovic, and he's got a 1 year left at $4 million. And I actually wondered if he would be an interesting depth piece for the Winnipeg Jets. We talked about, joked about bringing Kevin Hayes home last week. What about bringing Jack Roslovic home? I know he is home.
Not at that ticket. Yeah,
I think a lot of the criticism about him is kind of the stuff that was here, just inconsistency. He would have good games, and you'd give him time on the top power play, and then he would kind of go quiet, and he wouldn't be able to put it together for multiple games in a row. I mean, overall, his numbers last year, I think he had 20 goals, and just looking at this season, he's got the opposite of the Cy Young has 4 goals, 24 assists for 28 points. Yeah, last year he was pretty even, 22-23 for 45. So, interesting. He thought going home would be a benefit for him, but he's really bounced. He's played, I think, on every line the last couple of years.
Well, the big story in Winnipeg was that Jack Roslovic was just, the team was too good, and there just wasn't that spot in the top 6 for him. He got traded to Columbus, which has plenty of room in the top 6 for somebody to go in and make something happen, has played it there at times. And as you mentioned, did have a 22-goal season last year, which is nothing to sneeze at. And maybe that might give you some value on a $4 million contract, but that's not the case right now. And the former first rounder, I think, in some ways at a bit of a crossroads. You mentioned comparing those big trade boards and the Royal Rumble. Reminded me of the infamous CWE Rumble to Remember that we all went to together, which was a 50-man Rumble. Yeah. Except the fact of the matter is that there were many guys that were going in 3 and 4 times in different outfits. So you can add guys and you can put their names on the board that maybe doesn't necessarily mean that they're likely to be traded at all. But we are in trade deadline season, and there's no shortage of takes, suggestions, and rumored names on the market. Tons of talk about Erik Karlsson these days, just quickly, and we'll get back to the Jets in a minute. Watching that Oiler game last night, Reem, where Jack Campbell would have been nice to mix in a save in the first couple of periods. They probably would have had a much better chance of winning the game. He was good in the third period. They did battle back and get to a 4-all and then lose in a shootout. But a ton of talk about Erik Karlsson potentially being added to the Edmonton Oilers lineup. Certainly what they're talking about being thrown out that way would be a massive haul for San Jose, and they look to basically turn their team over. And I don't think they need a all-star defenseman making $11.5 million for the next 4 seasons. But I do wonder about that fit with the Oilers, because it's kind of seeming like you're just going with more of what they have already, and that's incredible offense with a major issue when it comes to keeping the puck out of their own net and doing things defensively. And obviously from Edmonton's perspective, no spread out scoring. It's so heavy, top heavy. And I'd imagine that would maybe even get even top heavier if Erik Karlsson was in the mix.
Yeah, talk about a team that needs to go all in and needs to just go for it and just trade away all of their futures. It should be Edmonton. They've been treading water, borderline playoffs for years. You have Connor McDavid, you have Leon Draisaitl. You're kind of wasting what these guys can do. I don't really care. If you're Edmonton, can you really get hung up on what a prospect can do in a couple years? Whether it's, who's this guy, Desharnais or Broberg, or these are the guys that are like a first round pick. You have Connor McDavid, you have Leon Draisaitl. I know they're up against the cap, so adding guys is hard for them, but just put your foot on the gas and go for it. They need to acquire someone, I think, Huss, because what are you waiting for with these guys? I don't know. If you're Connor McDavid, you're probably annoyed that they can't build a team around you, and they're up against the cap, and they don't have anyone in the bottom 6 who can score. So another team that's curious that I think needs to make a move, and Karlsson would be an awesome move. They've been trying to get a defenseman for a while, but I don't know. Is that the right type of player that they need? But well, he's awesome.
Impactful.
So you're not gonna be like, no, I don't want Erik Karlsson on my team. He's one of the best in the league.
I'll say this, and listen, we've talked a lot about the urge and many people's desires for the Winnipeg Jets to really push all in and trade first round picks and trade prospects and try to give the best chance to win. And certainly, I think there's a I'd say probably the majority of fans feel that way, considering the uncertainty of the next couple seasons with the way this roster is going to look and how wide open the West is. But if you're Ken Holland and you're Edmonton, you have to be thinking that maybe as much as any team in the National Hockey League. And, just we were doing the lock shop and talking about a bit of the Oilers and these picks. And, they're still fourth right now in the Pacific Division, albeit it's 2 points separating first from fourth. But they basically went on a streak of a month, Reem, where they only lost one game in regulation, and yet they're still right there in the mix. I mean, we talked about these standings right now, and listen, it's a good spot to be in if you're where the Winnipeg Jets are, or even where the Oilers are in that group, because as we know, it's so hard to make up ground, even if you pretty much run the table for a month, because of the single points that are be given out for teams that go to overtime. There's really no way to, unless you basically win every game and teams spend some time losing in regulation, it's really tough to make much ground on your opponents. And right now, for teams like the Jets, at least, they got to win games like this one tonight and just maintain their position and don't let the chasers catch them.
Yeah, and the best way to do that is beat the teams you should beat, and playing against Columbus, and we don't want to see a repeat of last game, last time these two teams played. So, Jets, we want to go over the Jets lineup here. Moving on. It's Connor Hellebuyck not getting the start. I wonder if he wasn't going to start anyways for this game. It's going to be Dave Riddick. They said, Hellebuyck's well enough to back up, but he didn't start last game because of the illness. And, I tweeted out Riddick's numbers, and we talked about them yesterday, just how good he's been. I think they're comfortable going with Riddick. And if you're not playing your backup against the worst team in the league, like, why is he on your roster, I think? So, give Hellebuyck the rest, and, you're going to need him for these upcoming games against the tough, New York teams, Devils, Islanders, and Rangers, who are red hot as well. So that's the goalie situation.
Well, and you know what? This is interesting because I don't think it was in the plans to have Hellebuyck not play in either of these games this week. But like Ken had said, Ken was sort of assuming, and I remember him saying going into the break that he thought that Riddick was going to get the start on the late Saturday game against the Blackhawks. But it was Hellebuyck in, and maybe that works out well because the fact that he was sick and didn't play in the game on Tuesday and Big Save Dave gets the start again tonight, that's going to be 8 days between starts for Connor Hellebuyck. And I don't think it will change the way they're planning on playing their goalies over the next little bit, but this could be the busiest that David Rittich is all year long because, of course, they go to New Jersey on Sunday night after 2 days off, a rare Friday, Saturday off days. And then you've got those back-to-backs against the Devils and the New York Rangers, followed up with the Wednesday game against the New York Islanders, and then basically playing every second day. So, Dave was real strong in the game against Seattle. They'll look to get another good performance from their backup tonight. And then I'm not sure if the plan, I think you would logically think that Dave would be playing at MSG against the Rangers. But I guess if Hellebuyck's feeling up to it and hasn't played in 8 days, maybe they go back-to-back with him. But that hasn't really been the MO of Rick Bowness, Wade Flaherty, and their coaching staff so far. So, if anything, this is just a chance for David Rittich to get a couple more starts than maybe we would have expected coming out of the break and continue his strong play that's been a big part of where the Winnipeg Jets are right now in the standings.
Yeah, he's been pretty solid, and we talked about his record yesterday. He's won way more than he's lost, and I think he's done exactly what he's being paid to do as a backup, and they got to be happy with signing him. Meanwhile, I think early on in the season, we were saying, they should have kept Comrie. They made a mistake, and he played pretty well early, but he hasn't had a great run as of late. I know he did win in Winnipeg, but what was it? I don't know. I think the goals against has been a bit worse, although it could be team based. Anyways, we don't need to compare those anymore. We did have some other news from Jets practice. Ken Wiebe saying David Gustafson skating in a non-contact jersey, so we're still waiting for him. And it sounds like Sam Gagner getting in here for probably Carson Kuhlman. I'm not 100%, but Bonus saying after practice that, look, he's had time to sit out. They want to make sure people don't get rusty, and it's his turn to get in. And again, you're playing against Columbus, who's the worst record in the league. This would be a time to do that. So Sam Gagner back in the lineup tonight.
Yeah, they man, can you believe they've got 36 points on the season?
Yeah,
You just said that the worst record in the league. I'm like 36 points. They've only won 16 games so far this year. 11, 17, and 2 at home, and 5, 17, and 2 on the road. Man, that is brutal. As far as the Jets go, though, when you mentioned with the potential return of Sam Gagner into the lineup, I think you're right. I think Koolman is probably the most logical one to come out. Certainly, we've seen Saku Menelainen playing some significant roles on the PK. And Stenny was in on PP2 last game as well, Remo. So I think you are right. I think if they do get Gagner back into the lineup for a game, Carson Koolman's probably the guy that comes out. And you keep running with Connor, Dubois, and Ehlers, Perfetti, Scheifele, and Wheeler. And again, we have seen Perfetti and Ehlers kind of swap spots, but Bonus really sticking with those pairings of Dubois and Connor and Scheifele and Wheeler. And the third line, we talked a lot about Adam Lowry and the way he played and the kick saves and the penalty kills. I thought that line was really good against Seattle. I thought Morgan Barron had a great jump in his step, although he, maybe too much of a jump. He ended up with that high sticking penalty, which was in the offensive zone. And I thought Mason Appleton looked good as well in that game. And, I know that they wanted to get back to Appleton, Lowry, and Barron when Appleton was finally healthy. And, I wouldn't be surprised if we see quite a bit of those guys tonight, depending on the matchups that Rick Bonus can get against either Patrick Laine or the Johnny Gaudreau line.
Yeah, Mason Appleton, how much better would his stat line look if he would have scored on that breakaway? And I agree, he's looked pretty solid, and they seem to like that line, which leads me to leave, going through the trade deadline, like what kind of, how would things balance out? Would they keep that line together if someone else was at it? Or, how would the lines shake out? That's a conversation we're going to be having for the upcoming weeks, but I agree. They do like that Appleton, Lowry, Barron line.
We'll talk more about this with Rewucki coming up, and I guess we'll also get to some of the trade bait, the boards. And you mentioned Frank's trade targets list. It's not trade bait, it's trade targets. Timo Meier still number 1. Chychrun number 2. You mentioned Dave. And maybe, for folks that missed the show on Tuesday, when you were talking to Dave Poulin about this, Poulin had an interesting hypothesis, if you will, about the Chychrun situation right now, that a deal's actually done, but they need to wait to technically pull the trigger to the cap.
Yeah, that's what he said. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with him. The one notable that we've been talking about, stock down, is Jonathan Toews. He's out of the top 10 in Frank Saravalli's trade bait list. He's missed 6 games with an illness, and I think maybe teams are concerned he did miss, was it last season, with the syndrome that he was dealing with. So, and he also, hasn't played as well as, he had earlier in his career. And he is, out of the top 10 on Frank Saravalli's trade bait list.
Well, and here's the thing. He hasn't played since before the All-Star break, sitting out 6 games with an illness. They haven't said what it was. He's not going to return for the final game of the trip in Ottawa. They say he continues to work out, but there's no plan in place for him to return. And let's not forget that he missed the entire 2021 season with that chronic immune response syndrome, believed to be related to long COVID. So I think some real question marks about Jonathan Toews. In theory, I think there's a pretty interesting fit, but like we heard Jeff Merrick kind of describe a couple days ago, it's one thing to romanticize about a reunion of a guy coming home with the incredible resume that he has. But I think it's important to find out exactly where Toews is right now. And I don't put too much into the numbers. Everyone in Chicago has terrible numbers this year. But where is Jonathan Toews at, and what is he bringing to a team that gets him today? Because this isn't 2013 Jonathan Toews right now. It's 2023 Jonathan Toews.
Hey, well, speaking of Chicago, did you see Patrick Kane? You see the shift yesterday going around on Twitter? For a guy who's trying to get traded, some of the effort on those, and he's kind of been an offense-only player for a bit here, but, I'm really not sure how it's going to shake out. Those guys are making such big money. Every team is up against the cap. I don't know why Chicago, if they really wanted to trade them, why would they wouldn't just eat the salary and just get what you can? Like, what do they care? It's either they pay them pay them to play there
Well,
and
the
get.
thing is that he's got to decide where he wants to go. I mean, up until a week ago, the word was, they hadn't fully decided yet. I'm not sure whether I really buy that. And then, of course, he was all bent because the Rangers went and traded for Tarasenko. So at some point, you got to make up your mind, I think, and allow your general manager to, have the most options to get to, go somewhere. If you want to play playoff hockey, if you want to pull a Matt Sundin and just say, no, I'm fine here, and I've got plans after game 83, I've got my cup rings, play out your contract and figure it out in the summer. So all of that, there's a lot of noise around the Chicago Blackhawks right now. For obvious reasons. And another team that is in that Blackhawks neighborhood is the Columbus Blue Jackets, and we'll talk more about that a little bit later on. But Ted Wyman's going to come. We've got a lot of interesting topics to hit with Ted. But just before we do that, we got to give a big shout out to our friends at Manitoba Battery. If you're in need for a battery or your car, your truck, or even that summer a toy you're working on this winter, Manitoba Battery has the most convenient and well-priced option in the city. How convenient, you ask? Well, you can put the order in for a battery at lunchtime today or around the start of Winnipeg Sports Talk and have it sitting on your doorstep in 2 to 4 hours for less money than you'd spend anywhere else in Winnipeg on the same battery. It's that simple. Order a battery today before 1:30 p.m. and get it before the end of the workday. Basically, the Amazon of batteries here in Winnipeg, and you're shopping and supporting local. No fighting for a parking spot at Costco. No waiting in line at Canadian Tire. No more spending money on a battery at the big box stores. Let Manitoba Battery bring it to you while you focus on more important things. Make that phone call or order online at manitobabattery.com. It's that simple, my friends. Let Manitoba Battery simplify your life and save some money as well. Our friends at Consolidated Supply, ready for a golf season. Of course, Mean Gene doing a great work, getting the golf carts out to the courses around the province. If you are in the market for any sort of golf cart, they are the exclusive club cart dealer in Manitoba. Also the experts when it comes to irrigation systems and artificial turf, not just for golf courses, but for your property as well. And if you're thinking about maybe a project to enhance your enjoyment levels in that backyard, think about a beautiful outdoor kitchen. They've got many great options, as well as a spa or a hot tub. Find out everything Consolidated Supply can do for you online at cte.ca, or pop down, visit my guy Joe, Spicy, the rest of the crew at 1395 Niagara Road East. And they are open to the public. Pop down and see them today. Hey, we're into February right now, still welcoming nominations for the unsung hero in your community. Look, every one of you knows one person that, whether they're spending long hours volunteering at the community center, making sure all those kids' programs are running, whether it's doing all sorts of extra work at the local schools to help out those in need, spending time, or whether it's just being one of the most dedicated volunteers around or helping neighbors in times of need. Those are the unsung heroes we're looking for with the program with Wallace and Josh Morrissey. Send us a nomination today to Unsung Hero at winnipegsportstalk.com. Our monthly Unsung Hero receives a autographed jersey from Jets All-Star defenseman Josh Morrissey. Wallace will donate $500 to the Dream Factory in the name of the WST listener who nominated our unsung hero, and Josh and Margot Morrissey will match that donation as well. Of course, Josh is an ambassador for the Dream Factory. It's a win-win-win. Get us those nominations today with Wallace at Unsung Hero at winnipegsportstalk.com. And just before we bring in Ted, if you're looking for great prices on natural and organic supplements, beauty products, and groceries, pop by Vita Health Fresh Market. And when you do, you're supporting a great local company, family-owned and operated since 1936, carrying Winnipeg's largest assortment of local products, too. February is Heart Month, folks. It's crucial to support this vital organ with omega-3 fatty acids. We can't always get enough in our diets, so supplement with RX Omega-3 Fish Oil by Natural Factors. It helps support cardiovascular health, cognitive function, eye health, and helps with joint pain and flexibility. And it's on sale today at Vita Health. Vita Health Fresh Market, empowering people to lead healthy lives. 7 Winnipeg locations, including the newest store in Linden Ridge. And online at myvita.ca. All right, let's get Ted Wyman in here. We got lots to talk about. Scotty's kicking off CFL Free Agency and some big local stories as well. Ted, what's up? How are you?
I'm doing great, Huss. It's been a while. How are you, my friend?
It is. It's great to have you back on the program. And listen, I want to get to a couple of your main beats, but just right off the bat, Freezer had a bit of a bombshell yesterday in the Sun, and this is something that we'd been talking about for a while. And listen, I knew when the ice came, there were big plans to build that rink. The team is incredible. I mean, they're going to be hopefully packing the Max Bell for a long playoff run, but it wasn't supposed to be this way. I know you would have talked to Paul a little bit. I mean, what are you hearing about this, and how serious is the situation with the ice that are so great on the ice, but so many of the things that I think were a hope got delayed by the pandemic, and at this point, it sounds like the WHL is sort of saying, well, this needs to get rectified.
All right. Well, so it's definitely not my story. It was Paul's story, but from my understanding of is what you're saying, which is that the WHL is, confused by what has taken place here in Winnipeg. They expected more. There was an agreement in place to have an arena built. That hasn't happened. And there's definitely been some talk from what we've heard with the Board of Governors about what the future of this team looks like. And that is kind of shocking given that, they just keep winning. They have more than 40 wins. They have less than 10 losses. It's, James Patrick and that those players are doing an incredible job of being one of the very best teams in the country and possibly a true contender for the Memorial Cup. But it's been curious, obviously, to me over the years as to why they haven't broken ground on the arena, why things haven't moved forward in that direction. And I did cover the team during the playoffs last year in Max Bell Center. And I mean, that just I covered the Western Hockey League for years, and in places like Moose Jaw and Brandon and, Prince Albert and Saskatoon and you name it in the West, they have pretty darn fine arenas. Some of them weren't always that great, but they're smaller sized NHL arenas these days. A lot of them, maybe only 5,000 to 7,000 seats. Some of them are bigger. But then you got a team here in Winnipeg, which is a big market, and they've got an excellent team, and they're playing in 12 to 1,400 seats or whatever that arena holds, the Wayne Fleming Arena out there at the U of M. And it just didn't seem right. It didn't seem like it would be possible to be profitable the same way that other teams are when they have that many more seats. And of course, it became curious even during that good playoff run last year. That being said, the atmosphere was great in that building, and I did enjoy the aspect of,
me too. It was
watching
great.
A game there, but it's not what was expected. So you had to believe that something was coming down the pipe, and I think people are getting restless in that league.
Well, and folks can get to the Winnipeg Sun and read Paul's article on it. I mean, the other thing, and I mean, obviously, I love going to ice games. I love watching this team. I mean, they are so good, and people should take advantage of it now because, I mean, this isn't like building a dynasty that's going to be around. I mean, players leave. I mean, it's very cyclical right now, and this does seem to be the year for the Winnipeg Ice. But from a city sports perspective, Ted, one of the reasons why I was so excited that the team came here is that I think we can all agree that there is definitely a need in this city for a small to medium-sized arena for junior hockey. I mean, I thought that would have been if it was built, it would make tons of sense that would be a place where the new basketball team, the Seabears, would have played. And I know there's always talk about Canada Life Centre. That building is so busy right now. You've got 2 hockey teams playing full professional schedules, and then you've got concerts and stuff coming in. I mean, I don't think it's feasible to add a third regular tenant there. So at some point, something's got to give. And that, I think, just from a local sports story, was why there was so much optimism about what Greg Fettis has done, getting the building, coming here, building it along with Matt Cockle. And they've done such a great job on the ice. But I understand where the concern lies. And to be honest, I kind of thought we'd start hearing things like this maybe even earlier. At the same time, building a new building in the middle of the pandemic, I think, would have been very dangerous because no one knew what sort of building codes were going to change, whether things were going to need to be significantly different. But we are where we are now in 2023. They've been here for a while. The team is going to be the center of attention throughout the playoffs. And it will be playing in the smallest building in the Western Hockey League with seemingly no end in sight. Although I'd love to hear that that's not the case and they're going to be breaking ground soon. But certainly I think if those answers were there, we probably would have heard them by now.
Well, you have to just, riffing off what you're saying, you have to look at it and say, yeah, maybe the pandemic plays a role in that. I mean, if you're getting ready to break ground on an arena, and the Western Hockey League's not even playing full seasons. One of the seasons they just had 24 games all in a bubble in Regina. You don't know what the future's like. And I mean, I could understand there being some trepidation and that delaying things. There's no doubt about it. But I do believe the expectation was that things would be back on track by now. And I mean, it's a really interesting situation. Another thing you touched on in there, Huss, is that they have gone all in on this team. They drafted extremely well. They had a lot of first overall picks, second overall picks. They had a lot of opportunities to get really good players, and they've built up something impressive with this organization, but they've also traded a lot of their future now to be all in for this year. And that's one of the reasons why they're one of the best teams. And I did actually read an article today that was saying, well, what would another community even be getting if the Ice moved there? Once all these great players graduate that are with the organization right now, when they move on to the professional ranks, what's going to be left? Because they don't have any picks for the next few years. And I mean, is a new community going to be able to support a team that has to go through that kind of a rebuild? So it's a really interesting conundrum as to what possibly can happen here. The best possible scenario I could see would be for, the owners of the Ice to actually make an announcement that this arena is on track and that they have a transition plan up until that point. I think that's what everybody wants to hear, but we don't hear a ton from them, Huss. So, I mean, that adds to the ambiguity of it all.
Yeah, well, and listen, I got to give them so much credit for the way they built that team and even the way they've handled the situation over the last few years being in Max Bell. I mean, their promotions have been great. They've done a lot of things to get people into the building. I think it's a very fun and great family atmosphere for taking young kids to games. And the hockey's been amazing. And listen, they came from Kootenay as one of the worst teams in the league and have built through these years. And we talk about these cycles. I mean, I don't want to even get into the possibility of the team not being here in seasons to come. But it could be history repeating itself where you got to go through some tough times and you build up. Bottom line is right now, get on out to see the Ice, and hopefully we'll have many more seasons to come of ice hockey, but I'm not sure they'll have a better chance at any point in the reasonable near future to do what this team has done so far this season. I do want to get back to the Ice. We've got the Scotties coming up, but of course it's been a huge week in the Canadian Football League, Ted, and CFL free agency is always interesting, especially now with the tampering. But let's go back to last week. Things get going, and word breaks that Kenny Lawler's coming back to Winnipeg. How realistic did you think that was as we got into this? Were you surprised that Kyle Walters was able to make that happen, or did you kind of think that he was the apple of their eye? And if we know one thing about Kyle Walters, he's been able to get their guy more often than not.
I think in a lot of ways it was almost vice versa. I think the Bombers were the apple of Kenny Lawler's eye. I mean, from the beginning, the rumblings I was hearing is that he wanted to come back. I think he was very excited about the possibility that the Bombers were going to trade for him last year. Unfortunately, he got hurt before that trade could happen, and it didn't happen. But I think that, the grass wasn't necessarily greener in going to Edmonton. He definitely was the highest paid receiver in the league, but he was involved in a losing franchise that really did not have a fun season. They didn't have a lot of crowds. They didn't have much success on the field. They were working with a young quarterback who hasn't quite found his way in this league yet. And I think Kenny Lawler looked and went, wait a second, what did I leave? I've got, there you got Zach Collaros and Stanley Bryant and Nick Dembski and Adam Bighill and Willie Jefferson and Brandon Alexander and some of the best veterans in this league that are a big reason why the team has been in the Grey Cup 3 years in a row. And I mean, I do think that Kenny Lawler wanted to come back to Winnipeg more than anything, and it was just about the Bombers finding the room within their budget and their cap space to make it happen. The rumor I had heard before the tempering window had opened was that the Bombers were going to go and try to woo him. I don't necessarily think they had to try to woo him. I think that there was a match made in heaven there.
Well, and I guess a big part of it, I mean, you have to look at it in the context of the entire receiving core. You have pretty significant money, although nowhere close to Kenny Lawler money, tied up in Greg Ellingson last year. And Ellingson missed a lot of time on the year. And of course, that gave the perfect opportunity for Dalton Schoen to emerge as one of the top receivers in the Canadian Football League and the guy that had the best season receiving-wise by the numbers. Schoen, I'll be honest, Ted, and maybe it was naive, but I just saw the way that he played last year and how incredibly effective he was and thought that this was going to be one and done. But unlike Nathan Rourke, who had tons of suitors, and Freezer also has a piece on this in the Sun today on this, he got some workouts, he got some looks, some conversations, but nothing happened. And now you've got one of the most productive receivers in the league coming back on a rookie contract, Ellingson leaving. Obviously, Rasheed Bailey's still a free agent. It seemed like it actually ended up being relatively simple for the Bombers to get a number that Kenny Lawler could get with and get within their cap situation here in Winnipeg to try and get back to the top of the mountain.
Well, it's a good point that Schoen's contract really helps with that. There's no doubt about it. And for his sake, given that what's happened here with the NFL, it seems unlikely that he could do much more to try to get an opportunity down there. So for his sake, let's hope he gets his due after this season and is paid well in the Canadian Football League for years to come, because he was an incredibly exciting player and just did a fantastic job as a rookie of adapting to Canadian rules and embracing them and making them work for him. So what the scouts have been saying about him in the NFL is that he's just not that fast off the line, and therefore he's more suited to the Canadian game where you can get a running start with the waggle. And I find it so weird because, Derek Taylor, our buddy over at CGOB, has definitely posted some numbers where he caught long passes while starting off the line last season. It's not like it never happened. But the thing that I just find so odd is when you watch him, he's always open. So how could he not have good speed? I mean, he's always found an opening. And when it comes to the scramble plays, when we know Zach Collaros can move around and out of the pocket and get a chance to extend the play and find someone downfield, who did he find 90% of the time? Well, it was Dalton Schoen. So is that just intelligence and not so much speed? I find that hard to believe. And I thought it was curious. And one of the things that was said in Freezer's piece today was that, the scouts were looking at the 15-minute workout that they were having with him in their camps, and not the body of work that he had over 20 games in the CFL last year and just repeated success. So I really find it curious, but hey, I'm not an NFL scout. I don't know what their decisions, what goes through their minds in their decisions. They did probably have some tape from him from opportunities that he had with the Kansas City Chiefs earlier in his career. And maybe they just feel like it's passed them by, but it's great news for the CFL. He seems like a guy that's absolutely happy to embrace it. He's happy to be a part of the Blue Bombers. He wants to win championships. I'm sure that Zach Collaros is thrilled to have not only him back, but of course, Kenny Lawler and Nick Dembski to throw to. And overall, I don't see a lot of reasons to think that the Bombers offense will be any less productive than it was last year. It should be more.
Oh, listen, I'm with you. I mean, I'll make an argument that they're far better set right now, even probably with a few more additions still to come than they were last season. And hey, the way they did it last season with Ellingson out quite a bit, I mean, it speaks to just how great of a year that Zach had. He was able to move the football around, but Schoen became such a reliable target and such a game breaker. And at 26 years old, Ken, this really did seem like this was his opportunity coming off that season to get a legitimate chance in the NFL. That hasn't happened. He'll come back here, and I think now there's a real possibility that Dalton Schoen builds off his incredible rookie season and could very well become a mainstay in this Bomber receiving core for many years to come.
I'm sure they would love that. Obviously, we do know now that they have invested a lot of money over 3 years in Nick Dembski, over 2 years in Kenny Lawler. You would assume that Kyle Walters is thinking about that, about how they're going to be able to afford a guy like Schoen next season and other players. But, at some point here, some of their big ticket guys are going to retire. Stanley Bryant is on a 1-year deal again here. He gets well paid, and he obviously, it's a year-to-year thing with him, but I think he's 37, and, the odds are that he's going to call it quits sooner than later. Jamarcus Hardrick as well. There's guys that are making money on this team that may not be planning to play forever. And so that kind of attrition would, I think, allow the Bombers to free up that money again to go for another, high ticket receiver. It would be interesting to have 3 high ticket receivers on your roster in terms of how you manage your salary cap. And as we know, Dembski and Lawler are assigned through for next season as well. So hey man, let's put it this way. I think Kyle Walters and his money people with the Blue Bombers have done an exemplary job of what they're supposed to do in terms of bringing talent in, signing free agents, retaining them, and just making a core that works in Winnipeg. So I have no reason to doubt that they'll continue to do that in the future.
Ted, that being said, everyone isn't coming back. We saw Casey Sales sign elsewhere, Michael Couture going out west. Once the dust is settled on this first week of free agency, what would you think about where's the biggest hole in this roster right now? What do you think Kyle's working on right now and their priority as we continue into the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, it's pretty easy in my opinion. The places that are going to have the most challenge for jobs right now, there's 3 of them. One will be defensive tackle. They have Ricky Walker, who they feel can easily step into the Casey Sales spot and play that import spot on the defensive line, but they're going to need some depth there. So there will be an opportunity for somebody to come in and earn a job in that area. I think wide receiver, which is where Rasheed Bailey was last season, I don't think they're going to be able to find a deal with Bailey. He hasn't signed yet, as far as I know. Haven't been looking at Twitter in the very recent past, but I don't think that they have the money to bring him in at what he deserves. If somehow he decides to take a huge hometown discount, I think there could be a possibility, but I don't think so. So I think their plan, pencil right now is Carlton Agudosi, who we saw have an extremely good game before getting hurt last year. And I think maybe he's a guy that could be really good. It looked like, but there's always going to be others that they bring in and look at, and you never know. Someone like a Dalton Schoen could come up again and surprise you. And the third spot is kicker. They didn't bring anybody in free agency, but if they don't have a big free agent or a big camp of Americans, Canadians, Globals, and Mark Leggio this year, I think there'll be an outcry, not only from the people, who watch this thing, but even, the team themselves. They need to see something that, is going to guarantee that they have more consistency in the kicking area next year.
Now, Ted, I had to get to those stories with you, but we know what the main event is for you starting tomorrow. It is the Scotties in Kamloops. If you're a fan of Manitoba curling, you're going to be spending a lot of time watching TSN. And Carrie Anderson, who has become so dominant overall, but especially at this event, has a chance to make a little history. Carrie and her team, the team to beat in your mind?
Absolutely. Until somebody knocks them off the perch, then they are going to be the top team. And, I really like Carrie's attitude. I talked to her yesterday, and she just said, it's whoever handles the pressure in these events that is going to have the best results. And I said, well, how did it come that you handle the pressure? She said, so well. And she said, well, it didn't come immediately, but over the years, you find a way to start handling the pressure, and they just don't let it get to them. They have so much fun. She says when they go out there and they're laughing and they're smiling, and it looks like they're not even, like not even in a professional situation. They're just having fun. That's when they're at their absolute best. And so I think, they love this event. They love she loves being in the hack for the biggest shots. She trusts her teammates. And I think she's got an excellent chance of getting that 4th straight, which would tie Colleen Jones for the all-time record. But, this is the deepest field I've ever seen for a Scotties. I know people say that every year, but I've never seen anything quite like this. And when you've had the breakups of the teams and the reformations, you've actually added more good teams into the mix right at the top. But even right down to about 15, 16 teams in this pool, in this Scotties, there's teams who have made the playoffs in the past or at least challenged for them. And I think Jen Jones and Carrie Anderson both told me They think that they've never seen a situation where it's more wide open and more teams could be close at the end of this thing. So it's going to be a real challenge for Carey to get that fourth straight. But, I think they have it in them, but this is going to be really interesting to watch.
Well, and a great point. I mean, you talk about all the new teams. I mean, the one team that didn't change at all, it's the old, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, was Team Anderson. The Jen Jones rink is such a great story, winning Manitoba with the Zacharias, the merging of her with the Zacharias team. And Caitlin Laws with a really different looking squad as well, right there. And, if I'm just looking at the odds right now over at Coolbet, Canada, Carey Anderson's the favorite. You've got Tracy Fleury joining Rachel Homan for a team that is right next in. But then Laws and Jones expected to be potentially right there on the weekend. Give us your quick thoughts on those other two Manitoba teams and how they're looking heading into this event.
Well, Joan, the Laws actually did not even make the final in Manitoba, which was a surprise, but they've been really good. It's a nice mix. Caitlin has slid into becoming a skip, handled it extremely well. And then, they've had issues because Caitlin delivered a baby in December, so they were missing her for a while. Now Selena Nigovan is the third is very close to delivering a baby herself, so she's sitting out the Scotties. They brought in Laura Walker, who's skipped in 3 Scotties herself for Alberta and has been there on the last day before. So I think that's a really big addition, along with Jocelyn Peterman at second and Kristen McCush at lead. I think they're newer. They're the team that's really going to have to show me that they can do it at this level, because we know Homan can get there. We know Anderson can get there. We know Jones can get there. But, I wouldn't be shocked at all to see that Laws team right in the mix for the championship. And, and the Jones team, I think the Zacharias team without Jones was pretty close to being one of the top 5 teams in the country. And now you add Jones, and that just makes them so much better. And I think they're learning everything they possibly can from arguably the greatest skip in the history of women's curling. And Jones herself said, she doesn't feel, she's twice the age of almost everyone on that team, and she doesn't feel it at all. She said they're very mature. She feels young at heart, and it's a real nice mix. So I could see them being right in there as well. The Fleury-Homan combination, that's going to be really interesting because, I guess it's being called Team Tracy Fleury now. It's been Team Rachel Homan forever. Just really interesting to see how that whole dynamic shakes out.
Is Fleury throwing the last rock?
She is, and calling the game. So, they were calling it Team Homan all year, and that was being allowed. I don't think Curling Canada is going for that. I believe they're calling it Team Tracy Fleury as Team Ontario.
Well, I guess this year it just matters they're just Team Ontario as far as the Scotties goes, and we can go from there. Just before we go out, you've got Canada, Ontario, Laws Wildcard 1, Manitoba. We'll have 6 teams kind of qualifying for that playoff round. Outside of those teams, is there a team or two that maybe is a little off the radar that you think has it in them to be playing on the weekend and, be in it right till the end?
Well, I don't know enough about the Megan Walter team, but Abby Ackland was the skip of that team for a long time. Walter is now the skip. The team is being called Team Megan Walter, and they're a wild card. But they were 5th or 6th in the whole country in CTRS this year, so that's not easy to do. They've obviously had a very good year. They made it to the final in Manitoba. I think there'd be no reason for me to think that they won't be in contention for one of those playoff spots. I think Kayla Skurlik out of Alberta is somebody to really watch for. A younger skip, went undefeated in Alberta. And if you haven't seen her last shot to win the Alberta Championship against Casey Scheidegger, go check it out on YouTube. The shot is fantastic. The team's reaction is even more fantastic. And they look like a team that'll be really fun to watch for a long time. I like Scheidegger. She's never quite made it over the hump here, but has been hiding, sort of lying around the weeds a while and could get in there if they have a chance. And I honestly, I think it's shocking when you look at it. Krista McCarville, I think, is seeded 14th out of 18 teams for this thing. She made the final last year. She's always close. Just because they don't play on tour, they don't get points, and that's why they're a low seed. But I think Krista McCarville, it wouldn't be a shock to anyone if they're in the playoffs.
Ted, this has been awesome. I can't wait for it to get going. We kind of made a few wagers on it today in the lock shop, but fill us in on, I can imagine, daily coverage in the Winnipeg Sun. You're going to be all over this from first rock till they shaking hands at the end, the final.
Pretty much, man. That's the way we do it. Lots of like you said, with all those Manitoba games, it's going to be pretty great. Even if I'm writing national stories, I'm thinking Manitoba is going to figure into it almost every day. So I think that is a nice bonus.
Manitoba takeover in Kamloops begins tomorrow. Cannot wait for it, Ted. And maybe if you've got some time next week, we can maybe talk a little shop midway through the tourney to see how things are shaking up as we get closer.
Sounds
I'm
good.
crossing my fingers. Einerson-Jones final, all Manitoba. How good would that be?
Yeah, that would be all, it would be really sort of summing up what Manitoba's been all about for the last 10 years in women's curling. So that would be something.
Scotties, Bombers, and more all over it in the Winnipeg Sun sports section. Ted Wyman, have a great one. Enjoy the tourney.
All right. Have a good one, Huss.
Good stuff. There is Ted Wyman. We're going to get back to some puck talk, maybe a little football with Brandon Rewucki in just a minute. Before we do that, well, we probably will talk a little football, get his thoughts on the Super Bowl. We did have quite a fun chat last week heading into the game. I don't think I'll be seeing if Brandon wants to head down to Royal Sports and grab some Chiefs Super Bowl championship merchandise, but it should be showing up pretty soon. Of course, when any team wins or frankly any team plays, chances are Royal Sports has the gear for that squad, the number one spot for fan merchandise anywhere around with the biggest inventory that you've ever seen. It's Royal Sports. Thousands of pieces of Winnipeg Jets merchandise, tons of Winnipeg Blue Bomber gear, and the best of the NFL, National Hockey League, CFL, Major League Baseball, NBA and the Raptors, international soccer, and more, all at the same time, having the biggest hockey selection you'll find anywhere. Thousands of sticks, snowboards as we get closer to spring break. Royal Sports really does have it all, but you got to see it for yourself. Pop by 750 Pembina Highway for the Royal Sports experience, and make sure to follow them on Instagram at Royal Sports Pembina for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. Listen, I'm probably more a Royal Sports guy when it comes to fan gear, but there is moments where even I got to get suited up, and when you do that, you're thinking F Apparel, custom suits for men, beginning at just $400 with the best selection of men's accessories around. Not to mention custom shirts, both tucked and untucked, pants, chinos, golf pants, and more. Whatever you need, F Apparel is there for you. Pop down to see them at 190 Smith Street downtown, or go online and make an appointment at that's EPHapparel.com. And fellas, if you're in a wedding party, 15% off for the entire wedding party when you get your suits at F Apparel, ones that you can wear long beyond the big day. And if you've got a 2023 grad in the family, make sure you get him suited up at F Apparel. And with a custom suit for a new 2023 graduate, that graduate will also get a free custom shirt and tie, a savings of about $150. F Apparel, 190 Smith Street downtown, and online at EPHapparel.com. And just before we bring in Brandon Rewucki, Jets are back tonight. Early start, 6 p.m. as they get going on this road trip. No better place to get together with the gang than watch the game on the big screen with big sound than Boston Pizza. Your local BP is there for you with amazing, great deals. The happy hour from 3 till 6 and 9 until 12. And of course, the best selection of beers on tap, great specials on schooners, gourmet pizzas, and more. Make sure to get down to Boston Pizza when you're looking for a great spot to watch the game. And most BPs will also have that great pick-a-player option as well. And if you are staying home tonight, you can always order online at bostonpizza.com. All right, let's get Rewucki in here. Big game tonight, big road trip coming up for the Columbus Blue Jackets. Brandon, how are you?
I'm all right.
Yeah, how was your weekend?
It was all right.
What did you do Sunday?
Oh man, it was just so. It's so rough. They were so close. It's been like 4 days, and that flag is still like seared permanently in my memory. Congrats, I guess. Whatever.
It was a hell of a game. Hell of a game. And I got to tell you, we will look back at this game as well played a game from a quarterback position as maybe any that I can remember. I mean, you could even make an argument that Jalen Hurts was the MVP in a losing cause. Although, I mean, the fumble that he put on the carpet that got returned for a touchdown was just an absolute killer because, man, it seemed like the Eagles had a lot of momentum early in that first half. And, I mean, they were bullying the Chiefs in short yardage. I mean, I can't remember the amount of times I had flashbacks of the Bombers with Strevler behind them just moving the chains over and over again. But it seemed like that play was big. And the one thing I'll say about the Chiefs, like if you had looked at my face watching the game in Vegas after the first drive where Philly got the ball and went down, there was a few nice hits early from the Chiefs in the first couple first downs. But once they got into Kansas City territory, they seemingly had their way with Kansas City going in. And I was fearing for the worst, like maybe like a blowout in that game. The way Mahomes got back on offense and brought it back, kind of gave me that moment to maybe take a breath. But I will say this was offensively a very well-played game on both sides. The one question that I think everyone's asking, what happened to this Philly defense? I mean, yesterday, the Chiefs O-line was at the parade, and they were wearing their shirt, zero sacks. I don't know if I've ever been more surprised by one aspect of a football game than Mahomes pretty much being untouched for most of the game and having all the time he needed to hit his receivers. And, of course, they established the run game as well.
Yeah. I know you can't give MVP to a position, but to me, the O-line and Andy Reid were the MVPs of that game. Like, not taking anything away from Mahomes, but you're talking about a defense that had 70 sacks, like almost set the NFL record. And
they were being mentioned with the 85 Bears.
Yeah, exactly, right. And I don't. The only time Mahomes had grass on his jersey was after a 30-yard run down the middle of the field. Like it was crazy the amount of time that he had. And like you said, the run game was, maybe the numbers weren't eye-popping, but they were still, moving the ball and creating third and shorts. And I mean, come on, Mahomes with a third and short, it's pretty much game over if you get into that situation time and time again. I'll tell you what, I think myself and 100% of Philadelphians were very happy to see Jonathan Gannon make his way out to Arizona, because when that defense faces a good quarterback, that happens. When they face a mediocre quarterback, the regular season happens. So, maybe there was a bit of a case that they were a paper tiger defense, but ultimately...
I was just going to say, I was blown away that he got hired by Arizona in the aftermath of that game. I mean, I don't know. I can't remember a defensive coordinator looking, more out to lunch when the Chiefs scored 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns. I mean, you don't see guys that wide open in high school football, Brandon, and it happened twice. That was a big part of the story. By the way, huge shout out to Stan Scott. Stan, thanks so much for the super chat. Great stuff. We really do appreciate the support. But back to Gannon. I mean, it was the performance of the defense, but it wasn't just the players, it was the coaching staff as well.
Oh, I thought it was way more coaching. Like, it was just an epic mismatch. Andy Reid versus Jonathan Gannon. Like, I just, and those 2 touchdowns, you're right, it illustrated it perfectly. Like, the first, okay, whatever. The first one happens, miscommunication. Like, sometimes, there's a breakdown. Like, you can kind of understand. They went right back to the well. And they pulled his pants down on live TV and said, "Thank you very much for the rings. Away we go here." The only incompletion Kansas City had was a throwaway in the second half. It was like there was literally no resistance. Honestly, it's pretty wild that the game was as close as it was late in the fourth quarter, just because Philly couldn't even breathe on a Kansas City offensive skilled player, right? So, it ultimately came down to kind of what we touched about, right? Who has the ball last? Well, Kansas City did. They won. Like that. That's how that game was going to go. I could have lived with the loss if at least the Eagles get the ball with like a minute 30 left and so go down the field and they don't get it. Like at least you could live with that. But it's they had a chance to at least do something and do something, like just to try to pull off an all-time comeback there, and they didn't get that opportunity. But having said that too, if the game went to OT, come on, you're relying on a coin flip to try to win that one. So yeah, it was a legendary game. It kind of played how I thought it would. Just hoped hoped Philly would have got the ball with 2 minutes left as opposed to getting the ball with 6 minutes left.
Yeah, no doubt. Hell of a game. I figured I'd have to talk about that. By the way, T. Konapali, I see you in chat. We're not going to need to put out the Ryan Friesen APB for you, are we? Let's remember our wager going into the game. I'm just joking, but you can hit me up on that. That's the Ryan Friesen. The Ryan Friesen bet. Although Freezer was good, I gave him a little bit of time. He came through, and of course, I know T. Konapali is good for it. But a hell of a game. But let's get to some hockey now. We got a long time to wait for next season in the National Football League, and we got CFL coming up. And man, it's been an exciting time for the Bombers with Kenny Lawler coming back. But let's talk Jets a little bit. What was it, 2 weeks ago, I guess we spoke, coming off of the Morrissey game, when he sort of put that team on his back, and I don't want to say single-handedly, but really raised everybody up in that game against St. Louis and got a bit of a good feeling going back in before they went on a break for the better part of 10 days. Coming back, you had a terrible Chicago team coming in for that bizarre 9 p.m. start. They got the job done. And I got to say, I really like the way they played against the Seattle Kraken. And I haven't seen a lot of the Kraken. I'm always looking at the standings going, how the heck is this team where they are? And I still thought that at times on Tuesday because of the way the Jets were handling them. But then you're in the third period and you're down by a goal. What did you think about the way the Winnipeg Jets played? It's hard to measure anything against a team like Chicago. This is a team that's going to be in the playoffs most likely. Where were you at on what the Jets were able to do? And obviously, most importantly, getting the 2 points in a shootout before hitting out on the road to Columbus tonight.
Yeah, I thought it was okay. I thought it was so. I mean, there was I guess that game, it was like 60% good, 40% bad. Like there was just a lot of, the first period the Jets came out strong, and I like the way they started the game. Seattle then kind of took over a little bit in the second. The
first period to me was all about the PK. Adam Lowry with the kick saves, and like they started off. I came right from the airport pretty much, and I got in a few minutes late, and it was 8-1 in shots for Winnipeg. But for the better part of that second half of the first period, the Jets were killing penalties. And listen, the penalty killers did a great job. It's a big reason why they're third overall in the league. And Big Save Dave made a few big ones as well during the PK, and I think gave them the opportunity to get that lead and move forward.
Yeah, and Big Save after like a rough couple of games to start the year has been lights out.
Yeah.
The Jets have been really fortunate to have really good backup, like 3 different backup goalies have played really well for them over the last 4 or 5 seasons.
Wade Flaherty deserves a lot of credit. Wade Flaherty, because it's not only you need to have the guys that can do it, but also I think the way they're managed, the way they're challenged in practice, the way they're utilized. And I think we saw it because that wasn't supposed to be a Big Save Dave start. That was going to be Hellebuck, and it's very interesting. And this will sort of take us into our conversation for tonight. But Big Save Dave's going back again. I think maybe this is only the second time all year long that he's had back-to-back starts. But I can tell you that at the start of the year, there would have been panic in the WST chat based on that. Certainly not the case anymore. And I think he's really earned the confidence of the fans, but most importantly, his teammates and the coaching staff all the way this season.
Yeah, and what's interesting, too, is that the last 3 goalies, Comrie, Brossoit, and now Rittich, were struggling coming into their first full-time season as the Jets' backup goalie. And they come in here and they play really damn good. But in the case of Comrie Brossoit, they leave the organization and then there's struggle afterwards. So that kind of strengthens your point there that, you know what, this Wade Flaherty guy knows what he's doing. I know my little brother went to some of his goalie camps back in the day. Couldn't maybe kickstart that pro career, but other than that, he's got a pretty good track record. But Rittich was great. The PK's been great all year, kind of, underrated. I think one of the talking points of the team is how good the PK has been. So, there was a lot of good, but there was a decent amount of iffiness as well. I mean, anybody that's played with Neil Pionk this year has seen their on-ice results take a bit of a dip. I thought the Scheifele line didn't play all that good in the game. And then what really bothered me the most actually was, once again, we see the PLD discipline issue rear its ugly head late in the second period there. And I wrote down in my, I keep notes during the games, wrote down, I'm down with him seeing the bench for the rest of the game because this is just getting ridiculous. And then, of course, he goes out there and scores the tying goal and the winning goal in the shootout. So what do I know? But, all in all, to get 2 points against a tough opponent, that's good. It certainly wasn't the cleanest, smoothest victory for the Jets here. But, with the next couple of games here, it doesn't matter all that much. But the schedule does start to stiffen up a little bit before the trade deadline gets here.
Well, exactly. The month of March is a really interesting month. Before we get there, though, they've got this 4-game road trip and then 3 games at home. We start off tonight against Columbus, then back-to-back Jersey and Rangers, 2 very, very good hockey teams, and an Islander team that is desperate and has been playing quite well with Bo Horvat coming out of the break, and then home games against Colorado, New York, and the Kings. Once we get to March, Brandon, back-to-back against the Oilers, and then a period of games with Minnesota at home, and then road games in Florida, Tampa, Carolina, and then home to the Boston Bruins. Be a hell of a way to test your squad post-trade deadline with any additions. But I think it does mean, I think this road trip is really important, because if the Winnipeg Jets can continue playing at the clip that they are and have some better results against the Eastern Conference that haven't really been there earlier this year, you then get to the deadline into March in a spot that I don't think anyone expected them to be, and not just comfortably in a playoff spot, but right there with the Dallas Stars for first place in the Central and the entire Western Conference.
Yeah. Like now fortunately, it's not a battle of, playoff position. We're talking about home ice advantage through the rest of the playoffs here. So yeah, like these games are utterly massive right now. And it is a good measuring stick too, especially the back-to-back there, because let's face it, if Jersey or the Rangers were in the West, they'd probably be 1-2 in the conference, right? So this might be as tough of a matchup the Jets are going to have in quite some time here. And it really does set everything up. I mean, no matter which way it goes, I guess, how aggressive Chevy wants to be at the upcoming deadline, right? Because if your team's in first place and you're maybe 3-4 points up on Dallas at that point, I mean, that's a tough sell in the locker room if you're not giving up a couple of draft picks and maybe a couple of prospects to give this team a bit of a boost. Or, you don't want to hear it, but if things go south a little bit, do you want to invest in a team that maybe doesn't look as strong as they did earlier on in the season? So yeah, there's a lot to play for, man. And even, individually on the team right now, like a guy like Cole Perfetti, for example, you're hearing whispers about, we need this impact forward up front, another piece here and there. He doesn't want to be a fourth line player come playoff time. He wants to get 13, 14, 15 minutes a night on the second line. So there's a lot of intrigue, both micro and macro, with the Jets over the next, 14 days.
You know what? You brought this up, and I was talking about this yesterday with Murat. I do wonder whether Cole Perfetti is a top 6 player for the Winnipeg Jets when the puck drops on the playoffs. And I think you can sort of read the tea leaves in a couple things. Number one, the way he, and Nikolai Ehlers to an extent, but I mean, Ehlers is going to be there, are, let's just say, have a little bit of extra time on the bench in late games, especially when they're leading. And hey, listen, these coaches have pushed the right buttons all year long. Individuals might not particularly like it, but if you think you're giving your team a better chance to win and they're doing it, you go that way. But if that is the case, I think it does, in some ways, maybe give us a little bit of a tip as to where the Winnipeg Jets would like to add to that group. And if that is the case, you do wonder what that means for a young man that has a ton of hockey ahead of him. But again, we always talk about this isn't really as much a developmental league. He's played well, and he's been in that situation, for most of this season. But there's no guarantees on the way things look at playoff time. And I think this next 2 weeks for Cole in particular is a huge chance to maybe show the coaching staff that, you don't have to worry about me at any point in the hockey game, and I'll be able to go out there and get it done, whether you add guys or not.
Yeah, well, and especially too, because I think the real question is going to be if the team doesn't think he's a top 6 guy once game 1 starts and they make an ad or two, does he really fit on Adam Lowry's line? Like, if that's going to be your hard matchup checking line, I don't think a lot of people would agree that that's going to be a good spot for. So it's pretty wild that it's either top six or fourth line playing 8 minutes a night. Like a pretty big swing in terms of responsibility there. But that's kind of how this situation, I think, is going to ultimately play itself out. I'm not going to be shocked whatsoever if we see fourth line Cole Perfetti once the trade deadline comes and goes here, because like you said, just look at past history with this team and with this coach, and it's quite obvious, right or wrong, doesn't trust Cole Perfetti with under 5 minutes to go in a tight game, always leans towards the bigger veteran style, like 95% of coaches in the NHL. Well, if I could put a big old guy in there, I'll put a big old guy instead of a skilled youngster in there to try to close things out. So I do wonder. I almost wonder if there's anything he can do at this point. You know what I mean? Like outside of going supernova and really talking about like a 10-game point streak with 15 points. I wonder if it's almost set in stone for the kid, and it's not totally fair. But you kind of wonder if the writing's on the wall that he's going to be on the outside looking in, and really more of an injury replacement inside that top six as opposed to the stone cold lock he's been all season long.
Do you think he's untouchable at the deadline?
I think so. It would have to be a pretty remarkable piece. I don't know if I do that for Timo Meier. I guess it would depend a little bit if it was like how many draft picks would be going back the other way.
Oh, but, yeah. I mean, he's not just a prospect. I mean, he's a legit player that's had success in the top six. And listen, I'm not, by no means am I suggesting that, or hearing, maybe Perfetti would be on. But if you're taking this massive swing and you know that this player is probably going to be the odd man out when you make that move, and he doesn't really fit very well, certainly on the third line and probably on the fourth line, does that all of a sudden make, because I mean, I'll tell you what, if you're including Perfetti in any sort of a package, I think the other pieces that you have to give up are significantly diminished, because you're talking about a first-round pick that has a very bright future. And listen, I wouldn't want to do that, but it's not anything that I've heard, but I have to imagine that, every possibility is being shopped out. And if people really want to go for those top guys on that board, like a Timo Meier, I'm not sure that there's a player like Cole Perfetti in these other markets that could possibly be included in that. And the bottom line is, if you got a player like that into your lineup, I'm not sure how much he's playing or how much he fits in if we're just talking about the present.
Yeah, I think there's going for it, that I think there's complete recklessness, and I think Perfetti is bordering on the recklessness side of things, because, I mean, there's not, it's really reasonable that next season he becomes a 70-point guy, right? Like he's like Remo's got the graphic up there, 29 and 50 games. Like he's easily going to be a 45, 50-point guy this season alone. Like imagine what he is next year, 2 to 3 years from now. I just think there's too much future value in terms of team building to move out a guy like Perfetti. But yeah, unless there's a forward or a D-man that we haven't heard being thrown out there just yet, where the value is just too much, I would be much more inclined to move two of Lucius McGroarty Lambert, for example, and make it a picks prospects package as opposed to somebody that's, pretty close to a top six NHL forward right now.
Well, exactly. And listen, I mean, these are fun conversations to have, and we can always speculate and throw around possibilities. But I think even if, like, the Jets are making these moves, or whatever moves we expect them to make, with the goal of playing 4 rounds in the playoffs. And even if Cole Perfetti was not slotted into that top 6 when they dropped the puck in round 1, guys get hurt, guys get injured. Yeah. I mean, there's no chance that he doesn't spend some time and doesn't have some key opportunities at playoffs. So I'm on the same page with you. I don't think that his name would come out there, but I guarantee you there's some teams asking. I mean, if you're Mike Greer and you're looking ahead and reading the tea leaves about, where your team is going to be in a season or two, knowing that you've got a chip that there's so many teams that are interested in, that certainly would be a guy that I'd be asking about. That being said, I think that he's going to be part of this club.
I'll tell you what, Carlson for Meier, for Perfetti, and then we can talk. How does that sound, Mike?
Carlson Meier. There are some wild rumors going around over there, Carlson. What do you think that the risk reward is? He's got an $11.5 million cap hit, and I know I've heard that Sharks would be willing to retain 18% of it. There's a lot of teams that if they were going to get him would need them to eat like 40% of it, which when you think about it for the remainder of that term is probably $15-16 million. Edmonton keeps getting brought up, and the Edmonton situation is so fascinating because it doesn't really solve any of the problems that they already have on their club, but it just takes what they do well and make it even more dangerous, and that might be enough to win against most teams in the West.
Yeah, it would be, right? Like there's always so much emphasis on defending, but I mean, if you're putting up 1980s numbers, I don't know if it matters all that much. I'm blown away that Edmonton has been seemingly so hesitant to make any kind of a splat. Like, look what Pittsburgh did for a decade, right? I don't even know who their last first round pick is. No, nobody does. It's unknown because they don't need to make them because they've got 3 banners hanging up, right? Like it's just mind-boggling. You have, I mean, never mind 2 of the 5 best forwards on the planet, but you have like the guy in all of pro sports right now, and you're not moving heaven and earth to give him basically whatever help he needs to get over the top here. It's crazy to me. So I get the contract is crazy, injury, all that stuff. I could give a rat's ass about that if I'm Ken Holland. I'm finding a way to get that done. And we've seen it's not like Erik Karlsson is a guy that, withers away come playoff time. We're talking about a guy that's been one of the greatest playoff performers from the back end, and maybe even in NHL history, single-handedly carrying a team, 1 game away from a Stanley Cup final. So defending PK, like who cares? Who cares if you have Erik Karlsson playing at the level that he is right now, joining McDavid and company? Whether it's Karlsson, Chychrun, whoever it is, it's crazy to me that they're more invested in keeping their draft capital than they are at taking a swing or two at the Stanley Cup.
I mean, listen, I guess it's easy for us to say that now. I don't think that's going to be the case in 2 weeks. And here's the other thing. Edmonton is so screwed cap-wise right now. Like a number of teams are. Like, even if they had a deal done in place right now, I'm not sure that they can make it happen until the last possible minute because of where they are with their cap, which at the same time is an opportunity for the Winnipeg Jets. Now, again, I'm not suggesting that they're in on Erik Karlsson. Maybe they are. And Karlsson, I would imagine, is a full no move too, right?
I would imagine, yeah.
I'm not sure that he's signing up for 4 years in Winnipeg. I mean, just going to throw that out before everyone assumes that Cheveldayoff's got this on the table and he can't make it happen. I mean, that's a huge part of any deal that the Winnipeg Jets make. But because of the Jets cap situation, because of some teams, I mean, Dave Poulin speculated that a Chychrun deal is already done, but they're waiting until they can make it happen for cap reasons, and that might take a week or two, and part of the reason why he's not playing right now. I'm not sure that it might not just be Armstrong sitting him out for a couple and trying maybe getting more interest from teams that maybe have a little bit slower to come up and step up to the plate with what he has to say. But we saw the Rangers make their move with Tarasenko, and while I know we're all focused on the 3rd of March, the one thing that Kevin Cheveldayoff does have that a lot of other teams doesn't is the ability to make a move and make a move now. But again, if I'm a GM trading that player, I'm not sure I'm willing to do that right away because I know as we get closer to the deadline, that level of urgency probably increases for teams that might have more of an ability to actually make that deal on the 3rd of March as opposed to the middle of February.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how good of a GM I would be because I just want things now. So I'm like, come on, what are we waiting for?
Typical millennial.
Yeah, typical millennial, right? I got no intention to spend anything like that. I'm still really. I would love to know the behind the scenes on this because we talked about this, I think, before training camp. Is the Puljujarvi to Winnipeg thing not just screaming at everybody in the face that it's almost too good of a fit for both sides, right? I just don't, I think so. Like, why hasn't this happened already? And I mean, I don't know. Like
he might get waived,
which to me is insane. I get Edmonton's putting themselves in this position, but I for the life of me, cannot understand.
Like, I can only say that there hasn't been a taker for Jesse Puljujarvi so far. I mean, I think teams are looking
but like, you're telling me you wouldn't give up a 4th or a 5th? Not even, I mean, I would do a 3rd round pick in a heartbeat, but like, come on, we're talking about a mid to late round pick for a guy that I think could be Valeri Nichushkin light in a few years, right? Nichushkin was radioactive leaving Dallas there. He goes to Colorado.
Well, Nichushkin went through an entire season without scoring a goal.
Yeah. Okay. So
and then he started in the Stanley Cup playoffs and ended up, signing it.
That's perfect, right? I'm not saying this guy's going to be a superstar. I'm just saying Puljujarvi can't hit the right side of a barn right now, but you bring him over to Winnipeg. He's got some Finns, some other Europeans that he knows, and you can turn his game around. I think he'd be a really good fit for what this team is looking for at an insanely cheap cost. I mean, I almost wonder at this point, is there something off the ice that's keeping teams away from him? Because I just don't get it. He's not going to be a 40-40 guy. I'm not saying he's ever going to be that, but defensively strong. He's a big ass dude, plays hard. He's having trouble finishing right now, but there's finishers here in Winnipeg. They don't need him to do that. So to me, if you're talking about,
where does he play? Is he a 4th liner?
No, I think he could be. I mean, I don't know. I think he could fit in nicely with Dubois and Connor, to be honest. I mean, if Evgeny Svechnikov can come in there and, give that line a bit of a boost, I don't know why Puljujarvi can't be the guy that does the dirty work.
At the expense of Ehlers?
Well, but no, you'd have Ehlers with Scheifele. Like, I don't know. To me, I think Puljujarvi's a good fill-in guy with somewhere in the top 6. Or, I mean, yeah, he could be a 4th liner too, but I think he'd be a good helper on the Adam Lowry line, because you're not asking them to bring a ton of offense either. I don't know. I've always been a fan of his game in terms of bringing somebody over that can help tilt the ice, and he's not going to cost you a ton of cap space and draft capital as well. So that's the guy that I'd be going after. Maybe they're thinking they can get him on waivers. I don't know. It's curious to me that the rest of the league hasn't tried to take somewhat of a flyer on a guy that was a 4th overall pick a few years ago, when there's guys with way less talent than him that are getting 4th and 5th chances all over the place.
I mean, listen, it's not the big contenders that are going to be doing, because first of all, none of them have the cap room to just add $3 million to their cap without giving anything back. And the reason why the Edmonton Oilers might have to go that route is the fact that they need the cap space and they just simply don't have it.
Yeah.
Which does make Winnipeg interesting. I mean, I have to think that if they wanted to get that done, it would have happened a long time ago, because it seems like this has just been out there for so long. Hey, just before we run, we got Columbus tonight. The Jets have Columbus tonight. Line A, going through it. I mean, hey, we can't forget what Columbus did to the Jets, though, in early December here in Winnipeg. So better be ready to go. But I'm interested in your thoughts on Jack Roslovic. $4 million salary right now. I mean, he's been bouncing between the 3rd and 4th line. He's not on their power play units anymore. What do you think the future of Jack Roslovic is in Columbus or elsewhere in the NHL?
I don't know how bright it is. I mean, he had that one insane stretch right after the trade, right, where he was, just under a point a game. He was kind of the story of the NHL for a little while. But it's I think you have to look at it at this point that's more the anomaly as opposed to the guy that he is. And I think you're talking about probably a tweener, a 3rd or 4th line tweener who, at times can maybe step in and give your top 6 a bit of an offensive punch, but you're not going to count on a guy like that to give you 30, 35, 40 points over the course of a season, which is too bad because he's got a lot of skill. We've seen here in Winnipeg at times, like he can get you out of your seat and he can make things happen out there. But I don't know if it's just consistency or something between the years with him. But I wouldn't be trying to trample over people in a Black Friday stampede to bring him into my team to give some help in the top 9 there. So it's a little bit unfortunate. It looked like it was going to be a feel good story with him going back home to Columbus there, but he kind of fits in with the rest of their season with the Jackets right now, which is sadly massively disappointing.
Yeah, well, who knows? It might involve Connor Bedard because they're coming into tonight with 36 points on the season, dead last in the NHL. And I don't think that was the plan when Yarmo went and gave the big bucks to Johnny Gaudreau in the offseason. Brandon, great stuff. We'll look forward to skates and plates tomorrow heading into the weekend.
Sounds good. Have a good one.
Right on, man. There's Brandon Rewucki. Make sure you're following Skates and Plates wherever you get your favorite podcasts. All right, we're going to stay with the pucks and talk about a Winnipeg Jet player that's now with the Manitoba Moose and how he looked last night in a big Moose win. Voice of the Moose, Dan Fink, coming up in just a second. Before we do that, had some great curling talk with Ted Wyman earlier. And, of course, when we're talking curling, we do it for Princess Auto here, proud sponsors of Team Jennifer Jones and Team Reed Carruthers, who will both be at the Scotties and the Briar, respectively. And, of course, Princess Auto is also the place where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. 2 Winnipeg locations, Panet Road, Portage Avenue West. And you can always shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. And a special good luck to the Jones Rink heading into Kamloops for tomorrow's opening round of the Scotties. Our friends at Culligan Water have been the experts in water and water services for Manitobans for over 65 years. A locally owned, family-run business, and they have everything you and your family can need when it comes to water, including water softeners, filters, bottled water coolers, whole home systems, drinking water systems, not to mention citywide delivery services, and commercial and industrial water products and solutions. Pop down and check out the Culligan folks at 1200 Sargent Avenue. You can give them a call at 694-5180 or check out everything that they've got going on online at drinkculligan.com. And a big cheers to our friends at Canadian Club. Of course, we were just talking Bombers with Ted Wyman as well. Won't be too long, folks, before the snow is gone, and we'll be at IG Field enjoying a CC at the Rum Hut or a delicious Canadian Club and ginger ale in a can in the stands. But right now, you can always get the taste of Canada's legendary favorite Canadian whiskey, Canadian Club, at your local Manitoba liquor marts. And check out that CC and ginger next time you're at your beer store with other canned options to go. Canadian Club, proud sponsors of WST and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. All right, we got some hockey to talk about. Of course, the Jets are hitting the road, but the Moose are back at home. Couple big games coming up this weekend, and started off the homestand with a nice win last night. Let's bring in the voice of the Moose, Daniel Fink, for the latest on the herd. Finker, what's up? How are you?
Oh, doing swell after a big win last night, and just enjoying a little sunshine here in Winnipeg. It might be cold, but it's still sunny. One of the things I love about this city.
Yeah, beautiful backdrop. Hey, just let's get back to the start of the week. We spoke last week with Nolan Baumgartner, and he sort of reminded me about that resumption of the game in Toronto. Just a bizarre situation. A game postponed after the first period, went right back in it. What was that like, and how different was that than a normal game day?
It was kind of nice only having to prep for one intermission, I'll tell you that. But otherwise, I mean, really, there wasn't a whole ton different. It was get ready for the game. Puck drop was at 7 local time. You have a morning skate, you do your thing, you drop the puck, and then it's done about an hour early. It was an interesting game for sure. I think probably the weirder part was, Eric Källgren started the game for the Marlies. He didn't even dress. He was on the roster, but didn't dress for the Marlies the second time round, which I'm sure the Moose weren't too thrilled about because they had to face off against Joseph Woll, who has emerged as one of the elite, if not the top goaltender in the American Hockey League this season. So, and he certainly played the part, but the Moose got off to a bit of a slow start, and that was kind of the theme for both sides going in. We can't get off to a slow start. Well, the Moose, they finally found their legs. But when they did that, all of a sudden the play came back 2 minutes and 19 seconds, already in a game that we had gone back in time to January 13th, as a shot that hit the pad of Oskari Salminen ended up getting called a goal as it had just crossed the line. Good catch by the Toronto side there on that one. But that shifted the momentum for a little bit. The Moose give up 3 quick goals, then had to kind of fight their way back in. But final 29 minutes of the game, after Alex Limoges got them back within 2, they outshot the Marlies 17-5, and that's the North Division leaders right there. absolutely dominated the play, but just couldn't find a way to beat Joseph Wall. Missed on a couple of chances, hit a couple of posts. And that's kind of the story of that season series against the Marlies, is the Moose really played them very well. But Wall was there in 3 of those games to pick up the win. So it was a pretty entertaining game. It was done quick, and then we were on the plane back home. But it certainly was a bit of a different look, and got me thinking, maybe hockey, 2 halves, 25 minutes. I don't know.
Yeah, you take that to the Board of Governors meetings. Let me know how that works. What the response to that is. But Dan, now back, and I mean, it is so tight within the division and the conference right now. Every game and every point so important. Very important for the Moose to get off to a good start in this homestand, and they did last night, beating the Iowa Wild 4-2. And over the course of the year, we've seen a number of Moose players come up and make impacts with the Winnipeg Jets. But there's also been some guys that have spent the majority of the time with the Jets that have gone back to the Manitoba Moose and have been making impacts. Baumgartner, and I can't remember whether this was off air or on air when we were speaking last week, but he was so complimentary of Dominic Toninato and what he's done with the club, how much he's bought in, what a great leader that he's been. And there's been some other guys too. Jansen Harkin's back with the club, 2 goals last night. And another guy that spent the entire season with the Winnipeg Jets, Axel Jonsson-Fjällby, getting into his first AHL game of the season with Manitoba, scoring. Some familiar faces to Jet fans making an impact right now with the Moose, and a great example of that was last night's win.
Yeah, and as I've said before, you always wonder how guys are going to come down, and it can vary. Sometimes guys need a little bit of room when they come down, but by all counts, Axel Jonsson-Fjällby came down. He was all smiles at morning skate, was ready to go, and jumped right in on the line with Cole Meyer and Evan Polai. That's not a lot of fun to play against. And you know what? I didn't actually realize going in that he hadn't played in close to 3 weeks, he was saying. So he was, I think, happy to just get on the ice and get going. But you could see him feeling out the game a little bit. And then kind of in the third period started to see those bursts of speed and used it effectively. But you know what? He fits right in on this team. I mean, the Moose are very happy to have a player like Axel Jonsson-Fjällby because, like Dominic Toninato, like Jansen Harkins, they slot in, they work hard, and they really fit that Moose brand of hockey. So who knows how long he'll be with the Moose, but I'm sure they're happy to have another forward on the club, especially after they had Mikey Eyssimont claimed off of waivers. And might have been a little surprising for the Moose based on some of the damage they've taken off the waiver wire with Johnny Kovacevic and Mikey Eyssimont both being claimed, that they actually got someone through waivers, and he was able to join on to the group. So it was good to see him jump right in and be able to contribute.
Well, one guy that's down with the Moose, probably because he is waivers exempt, of course, is Ville Heinola. And I imagine for a player like that, it'll be an interesting couple of weeks seeing what happens. I mean, there's always top players like that in the situation that they're in, mentioned in a myriad of trade rumors in and around. But the bottom line is he's playing some great hockey right now, and he's doing it switching from the left and the right. What have you seen from Billy over the last couple of weeks? I believe, 6 points in his last 4 games?
Yeah, he's been trucking right along, and there's a few Moose that have been able to rack up some pretty good point streaks along the way over the last little bit. But he's just been steadily racking up points, and he's done it playing a pretty simple game. I mean, and again, I think people sometimes expect Ville Heinola to be this guy that is this dynamic player up and down the ice, a Cale Makar, Miro Heiskanen kind of type, but he's going to do his thing quietly. And he does it with good vision. He does it with good awareness. He's not going to blow you away with his speed, but he is agile and tight. He does a nice job of pivoting away from guys to get himself some room, and he's going to make that good first pass. He's going to make that good pass in the zone. He's going to see that option that other guys don't. And that's where he's going to find his success. And so I think sometimes it's about understanding that he is a bit more of a subtle player than I think people give him credit for. But you know what? Last night he was downright ornery, throwing the body around, something that he started to do a little bit more effectively over the last little while. We saw it really come through in the playoffs. I know folks on the show will have heard me reference how he played in the playoffs last season as kind of the benchmark about where he needs to be on a consistent basis, and he's getting around that mark. So it's been good to watch him over the last little bit. I mean, we forget just how young Ville Heinola still is. Feels like he's been around forever, but he is such a young defenseman, and it takes time, especially for a guy his size, to figure out this North American game. It's a little bit different, and to understand how he needs to play on a consistent basis. And he's going to keep working away at that. And we're seeing the results from him. I know everyone will get on me for mentioning plus minus. He leads the Moose in that regard. It's gaudy numbers, up to plus 20 now. So it's pretty impressive there. But the point totals right around that point per game mark, and that's what you love to see for a guy like that.
When you look at the standings, often if you just click it onto the AHL site, you're just getting the full Western Conference. But things will run through the division. Just before we get to what's happening at the rink tomorrow and Sunday, give us a bit of a rundown as to where the Moose are right now within their division and sort of what's at stake in these upcoming games.
Sorry, I may have tanked my internet connection there, opening the standings just to make sure I get everything right. So I hope I'm still with you. But Remo's got me covered. Perfect.
Got you right there.
But yeah, I mean, when you look at this Central Division, it's ridiculous. First to fifth, a spread of just 8 points. You got two teams tied for first. You got 3, 4, and 5 all separated by 2 points. It is ridiculous. And then if you watch, of course, they're a little further back there, but lurking in the rearview mirror, Grand Rapids and Chicago been playing some pretty good hockey lately, and you'll notice that Grand Rapids 6-3-1 in their past 10. Chicago, they were 6-4 until a shootout loss against the Milwaukee Admirals. They came back last night with 2 minutes left to tie that one up. No doubt frustrating for all the teams in that upper echelon of the playoffs trying to catch them. But this division is always just so tough to get through, and you can never count out Grand Rapids and Chicago, and currently on the outside looking in, but ready to play spoiler and try and fight their way back in, much like the Iowa Wild did. They were looking on the wrong side of that playoff picture, rattled off a 14-game point streak, which they've started to come down off of now. And we saw the results of that. The Moose able to pick up a 4-2 victory. So it is so close. You win a game, all of a sudden you're in third. You lose a game, all of a sudden you're in fifth, and it's a lot. So every point is so valuable along the way. We say it ad nauseum. It is cliche at this point, but it's so true. I mean, when you look at how close this division is, I mean, there was that controversial game at the start of the season where the Moose thought they had scored a goal in the final minute against Rockford. It got disallowed. Well, that's a big point right now, especially since Rockford came back and won that game. That's a 2-point swing. That changes the standings considerably. So little things like that start to add up through the season. You have an off night. Well, you don't get 2 points. And so you have to be on your game every night. The good thing for the Moose is they've been playing some real consistent hockey of late, despite not getting the results at times. Of course, they went on that little 3-game losing streak on the first half of their road split going into the All-Star break. Played some excellent hockey, only came out with 2 points with a couple of overtime losses. But when you can play consistently, eventually those results are going to come, and they have been coming over the last little bit.
Well, and which takes us to this weekend, because rematch with Iowa tomorrow, and I mean the quintessential 4-point game. By the way, folks, we've got some tickets. We're going to spin the wheel of winners for some tickets to Friday's game in a few minutes once we're finished with Fink. But if you go into the chat, if you're with us right now, Remis had a link there, winnipegsportstalk.com/contest. If you're listening on the podcast, you can go to the website, click on the contest link. We've got a couple pairs of tickets for that game. Oh, it's a pinned tweet. Now, Remis is all over this. Pinned in the chat right now. Click on that, enter to win a couple tickets for Sunday's game. But before we get to Sunday, Pride Night tomorrow and a rematch against the Iowa Wild, another huge game for Manitoba.
Yeah, Pride Night, really excited for this one. It's obviously an important game to have, and certainly brings out a different community to the game than sometimes we usually get, and it's a lot of fun. There'll be some Pride t-shirts. The Moose have this great design that we've used the last couple of seasons. The players are always rocking them as their workout shirts and things like that. But those will be available on the concourse, with proceeds going to Rainbow's Resource Center. Does some great work here in Winnipeg. And really looking forward to Friday night. Of course, you mentioned Sunday as well. That'll be the Grand Rapids Griffins in town. That's Dylan Sandberg bobblehead days, so be sure to get your bobbleheads. The first 3,000 fans in the building will get their hands on that. And then it's a busy weekend here. And then on Monday, the long weekend, it'll be that annual Family Day, Louis Riel Day matchup for the Moose, 2:00 puck drop against the Griffins, and that one's Superhero Day. We're bringing in the Hulk, Hustler.
The Hulk?
Yes, the Hulk will be us. Try to keep him from smashing anything, but looking forward to that.
The Hulk's usually calling the game up in the press box, but I guess double coming down there, Finker. That'll be cool. And you know what I was going to say? Don't forget the Sunday game's a 6:00 game, so a real quick turnaround going in. We're so used to having these 2:00 matinees, but 6:00 for that game on Sunday, and then right back at it with a great afternoon matinee. Perfect time to get out and see the Moose if you haven't on Louis Riel Day.
Yeah, it's going to be absolutely rocking on Monday. It always is such a fun game. We'll probably be over 6,000 at least in the stands for that one. So, the Moose bring such a great atmosphere, a little bit different than Jets games with the younger crowd. They don't care what the score is most of the time. They're just going to be screaming their heads off the whole time, dancing in the stands. So it's a lot of fun. Obviously, the Moose hoping the score's in their favor. They're able to pick up a couple of big wins against the Grand Rapids Griffins last weekend to the tune of a combined score of 9-2. So the Griffins are certainly going to be not feeling too great about that and looking for a little payback on the road. And you're mentioning that rematch against the Wild, so tough to win those games back to back or a couple of days apart, win the 2-game series. So it'll be a tough test, and we'll see who goes between the pipes. Could see the young phenom and Jesper Wallstad for the Iowa Wild. It's a possibility. Zane McIntyre, the veteran goalie, on the other side of things. Arvid Holm's been playing real well for the Moose of late, or it could be Oscar Salmon. You're going to get a good matchup in goal no matter what you do. And last night's game, a lot of fun, back and forth, really well played, great pace to it. So looking forward to seeing more of that on the weekend.
Well, okay, so tomorrow, Pride Night, Friday, Iowa Wild, and then Grand Rapids in Sunday, 6 p.m. That's the Dylan Sandberg bobblehead game. And then what a great day for hockey fans to have the day off. You can head down to the rink, check out the Moose live at 2 p.m., and get back home just in time to see the Jets take on the New York Rangers at 6 o'clock. Dan, thanks for doing this. Good luck to the squad. I'll maybe see you out at the rink this weekend, and good luck tomorrow in that big game against Iowa. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Huss. And again, if you're looking for tickets, moosehockey.com/tickets, and you got a few options to get down to the rink. But if you can't make it, I'll have to call for you on cglb.com/sports or AHL TV.
Thanks, Finker. Have a great one.
Talk to you later, Huss.
Good stuff. There's Dan Fink, voice of the Manitoba Moose. Hark with a couple last night, and Axel Jonsson-Fjallby scoring in his first game with the Moose after clearing waivers a little earlier this week. All right, well, it is a long weekend coming up. I think everyone's down for that. And if you're planning on maybe enjoying a few cold ones, make sure it's Winnipeg's finest local beer, Little Brown Jug. Maybe take advantage of a little extra day to pop down and visit them in person at the brewery and tap room and try all their great offerings down on William Avenue. But of course, you can get the iconic 1919 and 4 new Little Brown Jug offerings in the Good Times Variety Pack available there, Manitoba Liquor Marts, or anywhere that sells great beer. And don't forget, you can always go online, littlebrownjug.ca, check out everything they've got going on, and order online for citywide delivery as well. And hey, a big shout out to the Nick and Nikki DQ group, our great sponsors since day one, with those amazing stack burgers, ice cream treats, blizzards, cones, shakes, and more. And of course, the spot to get the best in ice cream cakes and blizzard cakes available. And if you do want to do that, hit them up on Instagram at DQ Manitoba. They'll get it ready for you, custom made to pick up at any of the 4 Nick and Nicky DQs. Be sure to pop by. Let them know your friends at Winnipeg Sports Talk sent you. DQ Niverville, DQ Northgate, DQ Polo Park, and the DQ over on St. Anne's. All right, good stuff with the fellas. Let's get Remis back in here. And Remo, man, I sort of caught me off guard that Monday afternoon game. It wasn't until earlier today where you even informed me that it was the February long weekend. It's the one that I'm still not used to right now. But I'll tell you what, that could be a great double dip, seeing the Moose in person and then getting back in time for the Jets to continue this road trip against the Rangers at MSG.
Yeah, I completely forgot that it was a long weekend. I should know this, but cause it is family day, and I do have a Louis Riel day, and I do have a family now that I'll be spending time with on the weekend. But yeah, busy one for the Moose. That's a crazy turnaround there. You got the Sunday evening game, which they don't usually play Sunday evening. Usually play in the afternoon, but then they got them into Monday afternoon. So that's the AHL schedule for you. And yes, we do have the pair of tickets to that Sunday game. Our website, winnipegsportstalk.com/contest, and I'll hand them out Friday evening late. I will send out the email distributing those, but. Exciting time for them getting Axel back. They got some NHL talent on that team, Huss, with Tornado, Harkins, and Axel. That's some good players right there.
They are. Oh my God, I'm just looking into chat. T. Konopali is looking to double down on our
Yes.
Super Bowl wager with a women's curling. Kate, Ticon and Paul, you hold on tight. We'll discuss that in a second. But Remo, while I get to the Coolbet lines, we want to open up the exclamation mark tickets in the chat.
Yeah, let me do it.
Because, folks, we do have, so again, the link is pinned. And, folks, if you're listening on the podcast, you want tickets to the Dylan Sandberg bobblehead night for the Manitoba Moose, go to winnipegsportstalk.com/contest, and you can enter to that. We'll announce the winners tomorrow on the program, and make sure you have those tickets in time for the weekend.
Well, I was gonna give them out after the show just in case they listen Friday. They can do it
sure,
too,
sure.
so.
Yeah, as they say, like Friday, later on Friday, we'll have a couple days to do that. But tickets for Sunday are being done on the website. But we've got tickets for tomorrow's game. So those are what we're going to do today. We didn't want to leave it too late. So just as soon as you see in the chat a Streamlabs prompt that says put in exclamation mark tickets, do that. We've got 2 pairs of seats for the game tomorrow night. As we mentioned, is the Pride night and a big game for the Moose as they are neck and neck with the Iowa Wild. That was a huge win last night for the club. They'll look to get the sweep tomorrow down at Canada Life Center. So yes, keep in mind, keep your eye out, and we will spin the wheel. Can we spin the wheel for Springsteen tickets? What?
Yeah, do you hear he's coming here, Huss?
I did. Is that true?
Yeah, November 10. Yeah, you
Come
missed
on.
it. I talked about it the day you were away. But yeah, November 10. It's finally happening.
At Canada Life Center?
Canada Life Center, November 10. Bruce
Whoa!
Springsteen.
Every sports writer in North America is going to be here because every one of them loves the boss. I did see Springsteen once at in St. Paul, and it actually was absolutely incredible. So, highly recommend on that. Okay, the chat's open, or the raffle is open right now. Exclamation mark tickets, and yes, these are tickets for the Moose game tomorrow night, not Springsteen on November 10th. I thought you were joking about that, Issue Boy Bruce.
You got to sign up, be a verified fan, Huss, if you want to get those tickets.
What, do I have to join like the Springsteen fan club or something
well, you
like
got to
that?
tell Ticketmaster you're a human, so you're not a bot trying to buy them all up before they go on sale.
Interesting. Do we have any idea how much these tickets are?
I don't know, but probably a lot.
I'm guaranteeing right now there's going to be some serious sticker shock for Winnipeggers. This will not be an $85 ticket for the Springsteen show. That's for sure. But yes, exclamation mark tickets while we do that. Okay, Ticona Pauly, you want to double up our Super Bowl bet on the Scotties, and you want the Homan and Fleury rink? Okay, well, if you want to take Homan and Fleury, I'll take Carey Einerson, and if anyone else wins, it's a push. How about that? Let me know in the chat. Meanwhile, I'm going to get to these Coolbet lines, and actually, while we're at it, if you do want to get in on the Scotties right now, those are our top 2 teams, Canada and Ontario, the 2 favorites. The Rachel Homan Tracy Fleury rink that we talked about with Ted, and of course, the 3-time defending Canadian champion Carey Anderson rink from Manitoba. But, 3 of the top 4 ranked teams, certainly by the book, are Manitoba teams. Caitlin Laws and Wildcard 1 coming in at 3rd at plus 605, and Jen Jones, Mackenzie Zacharias in the squad plus 770. We've already got matchups up for the first 2 draws. Canada and Carey is going to be playing Quebec in the first round. They're a big minus 1,000 favorite. And then first game up on Saturday is going to be Jen Jones against Northern Ontario, which should be a great matchup, actually. That's one of the closer odds we've got. Anyways, Coolbet's got it all for you there. Scotties futures, make sure you get those in before tomorrow, and make sure that you are watching the girls do their thing over on TSN. As far as hockey goes tonight, gang, the Jets and Blue Jackets kick things off at 6 p.m. Jets minus 190 favorites on the road. The Blue Jackets plus 160. Jets puck line to win by 2 is minus 1.5. And if you like the Jets to win in regulation, you can get a better number at minus 118. I was interested to see what the goal props were tonight, though, Reem. Of course, Pierre-Luc Dubois and Patrick Laine both playing against their former teams. The guy at the top of that list, though, Kyle Connor at plus 119. Scheifele plus 148. Ehlers plus 154. Dubois plus 167. And then there's Patrick Laine at plus 180. And Johnny Gaudreau at plus 205. You will recall that Laine did have 2 goals in his last game against the Winnipeg Jets here in Winnipeg, plus 950 for that to happen tonight. The one interesting number up there that I saw, though, a shot prop for Kyle Connor. Over 3.5 shots tonight. Even money for Kyle Connor. I don't think he's gone over that in the last couple of games, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's firing some more pucks on net tonight. I think I'm going to jump on that one tonight as well. Laine shoots from the dressing room, so over 2.5 shots at minus 182. Probably a pretty safe bet, but a pretty big number. Other games tonight. Huge game for the Florida Panthers. They have to have this game. They're chasing the Washington Capitals. Teams have games in hand on them. Huge opportunity for them to take advantage of the absence of Alex Ovechkin and get a win. Panthers minus 123. I do like Florida to win tonight. Carolina, huge favorite, minus 442 against the Montreal Canadiens. A 2.5 goal puck line at plus 105. Bruins and Preds. Jeremy Swayman going tonight for the Bruins. They're big favorites, as they are pretty much every night right now. Minus 177. And the Detroit Red Wings coming off that shootout win last night. Really fun game to watch against the Oilers if you caught that one on Sportsnet. Wings playing the back-to-backs. They're plus 210. Calgary, a big minus 256 favorite. New Jersey taking on the St. Louis Blues. Blues had that big win against the Panthers earlier this week. But it's the Jersey Devils that are minus 141 favorites. And the Kraken, who we just saw a couple days ago, they're back at home. Minus 178, hosting the Philadelphia Flyers, who are plus 150. And the Vegas Golden Knights, minus 181 favorites at home against the San Jose Sharks. Minus 1.5 on the puck line. I don't mind that. Vegas, Remo, have really turned it around lately, even without Mark Stone. They've won by 4, 4, and 5 in their last 3 games, scoring 17 games over the course of those games. Sounds like their offense is going. And, of course, Logan Thompson out, Aiden Hill getting the majority of the work right now in net for Vegas.
Yeah, Vegas is a team. What are they going to do at the deadline, Huss? And when is Mark Stone going to be available? Because, I mean, it would be a real shame if they made a deadline acquisition, then Stone came back before the playoffs and they had to be over the cap. That would be a really bad situation. So
yeah, a bad situation that probably won't happen. I think if anything, if Mark Stone is available to play, let's just pencil in game 1 of the playoffs. Tell me if you've heard this one before.
Yes. I mean, what's a salary cap if you don't have every team trying to find any possible way to get around it? So we'll see what happens there, but the blueprint has been already written for that one by Tampa Bay, and Vegas is a good team, and Bill Foley wants to win. Are they going to go out and try to get Timo Meier or someone else? We'll have to see. There's so many intriguing storylines ahead of March 3 trade deadline.
Hey, you know what? Again, if you want to close up the contest for exclamation mark tickets, we can do that. But I do, by the way, all the odds up over at our friends at Coolbet, and check out Coolbet Canada on Twitter and Instagram. Daily picks from myself and Dusty on the Lock Shop. We made some people very happy yesterday. 4-0, and there was a number of people that parlayed those 4 picks, and it came in at over 12-1. So that was nice. But do have some real sad news. And of course, it is Black History Month. And of course, being honored in the National Hockey League. And Paul Gerard, a Winnipeg native, unfortunately passed away at the age of 57. Had a chance to meet Paul on a couple of occasions back at the old station. Was just a real gentleman. Gone far too soon at 57. One of the few black players from Manitoba, along with Ray Neufeld, to crack the National Hockey League. He did only play 5 games in the NHL, but had a really distinguished IHL career, played in the American Hockey League as well, and had spent the better part of the last 30 years coaching at his alma mater, Lake Superior State, where he starred between 83 and 87 with the Colorado Avalanche in 02-03 as an AHL assistant with Hershey, Iowa, and Texas, as well as an assistant coach with the Dallas Stars and Calgary Flames in the NHL. And then the last 5 years at the University of Nebraska, Omaha. This was, a trailblazer in many ways, and just really, really sad news, especially as the league celebrates Black History Month. Of course, Wade Ray Neufeld's been on the program before and been a huge part of this hockey community. But Remo, I don't know whether you had a chance to meet Paul when he'd come by the station at all over the course of our years over on Pembina Highway. But what a great, great man. I was totally caught off guard by his passing today. I didn't realize that he was sick or battling cancer, but a real loss for our hockey community here in Manitoba and a number of places where he made a really big impact over the last 30 plus years.
Yeah, I remember he came in this studio with us, with Mike Snee for College Hockey Inc. to talk about college because he had been coaching at Omaha. And, he's obviously from Winnipeg, great career is across many different leagues. And I'll be honest, before he came in, I really didn't know much about him, but some nice pieces written about him today. And I was pretty shocked. It was because, that's too young, Hustler, to be passing away. So
it is.
I was sad to hear that.
Yeah, really sad. So, just sending our condolences to Paul Gerard's family and friends. And, just as I said, really sad because as I said, I was so impressed when I got to meet him the first time when he came in with Mike and met him again at the rink on another occasion. And, I'd really carved out an incredible life in the hockey world. A number of stops coaching in the National Hockey League and got a chance to play 5 games in the bigs, a long, illustrious minor league career, but definitely gone too soon, Paul Gerard. All right, Remo, let's spin the wheel and see who's going to see the Moose tomorrow night.
Yeah, been here. Here's all the names. We got the wheel.
All right, good luck, everyone. So we've got 2 pairs of tickets. We'll spin it twice, and what you're going to need to do if you are a winner is send us an email to winnipegsportstalk@gmail.com, just confirming the email that you want the tickets sent to, and Remo will send those out after the show. All right, good luck to everyone. A little Friday night hockey down at Canada Life Center for the Moose and Iowa Wild. Let's spin the wheel, Remo, and see who wins the first pair. It is spinning, and it is coming up. Marshall Caron. What up, Marsh? Right on. Okay, so Marshall, you send us an email, winnipegsportstalk@gmail.com, and we'll make sure we get those sent out to you. Remo, let's spin it one more time for our second pair of tickets.
Sure. Second. Next one, I'll remove him.
Yeah.
And then we do have another, if you don't win, we do have another pair for Sunday's game up for grabs on our website, winnipegsportstalk.com/contest.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, if you want tickets for Sunday, go to the website, winnipegsportstalk.com/contest, and enter to win. We'll give you till the end of tomorrow's show to get those in, and Remo will send those tickets out probably later on Friday or early on Saturday morning. The game on Sunday, again, that's the Sandberg bobblehead night, 6 p.m. start. Not the usual Tuesday, not the usual 2 p.m., but the 2 p.m. game is on Monday for Louis Riel Day. All right, who's the second winner? We spin again. And is it Dan Jets fan? Is it In Bones We Trust? It's In Bones We Trust. All right, In Bones We Trust. Fire away. winnipegsportstalk@gmail.com, and Remo will send those tickets to you guys after the show. Marshall, In Bones We Trust, very well done. And again, go to the website, the contest link for your chance to win tickets to the game on Sunday, where you'll be coming out. I got the Mikhail Burden bobblehead here, but it's Dylan Sandberg's turn. Had a nice, neat little ad for it at the game, the Jet game over on Tuesday. Well, good stuff, Remo. What do you think tonight about this game? How are you feeling heading into game 1 of this roadie?
I feel like the Jets are going to smash us. They want to get revenge for that first time these two teams played and they lost and really didn't show up. They want to start off this road trip right. I think they're feeling good. And I think it's payback, Huss. And they're usually, Dave Rittich, it's pretty much guaranteed win when he's in net, Huss. I mean, you look at his record.
Goalie controversy?
9-4. Yeah, I think. Yeah, you're right. Is there a goalie controversy in Winnipeg? What is he? 9-4-0. And let's throw out that first game. He was just getting used to it. It's 9-3. I mean, he's got better numbers than Hellbuck has in terms of goals against. If you throw out that first game, better by 0.01. But still, I mean, you can't argue with the results. I think we got our next topic. We should go for an hour.
Yeah, it goes for an hour. Goaltending controversy in Winnipeg. Yeah, I'm not sure. But hey,
is there?
You know what? Maybe he'll throw up a goose egg or something tonight and we'll be like, do you have to go back to Big Save Dave?
Yeah.
In 2 days.
How do you take him out?
Hey,
he's won 4 in a row.
I'm here for it. It will be interesting to see though how the Jets play. I think an important game. You got to have 2 points against the worst team in the league. You can't go 0-2 against Columbus this season. And let's face it, they've got this game tonight. Then they're going to have Friday and Saturday off in New York City. Well, I imagine there'll be practice at some point.
Big dub.
So earn a fun day off, fellas, tonight with a big win against the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Like this Columbus roster, like they're sitting Gavrikov, Werenski's out, Nyquist, he's out. They're like still gonna trade him, and he's getting Mark Stoned too on a team where he'll come back for game one. Although that's kind of weird to get traded for a team and have your first game in the playoffs. That would be, that's kind of weird, but. Yeah, I think the Jets are. I think they're gonna smoke. I mean, you mentioned you can't lose to Columbus twice. I do want to point out the Maple Leafs have lost to Arizona twice this year, right, Huss?
Well, they didn't lose last night to the Blackhawks, who barely showed up for that game. That was not sure if you've seen the highlights of Pat Kane not too into it right now with the Blackhawks. What a miserable situation they've got going on right now. But as we say, you look at the standings, and they're the Chicago Blackhawks at 37 points. The only team they're ahead of, the Columbus Blue Jackets tonight. And I feel for Line A. I feel for Gaudreau, but Line A in particular. Gaudreau.
You feel for Gaudreau? He chose to go there.
As I say, it's very different. I mean, I have no idea why he did. I think he just really played his hand poorly. He thought Philly was going to sign him to a big deal, and then they're like, yeah, sorry, we don't have the money. We're not in. And then he ended up having to take way less. Like, if he could go back and do it all over again, you'd have to think that he probably just stays in Calgary, takes $10.5 million a year for 8 years. Or maybe he likes playing on a garbage team in anonymity. Maybe that's what he was looking for, I guess.
I think he wanted out of Calgary. I think him and his family decided it wasn't a good situation for him there, and he wanted to be closer to home, so had to go out east.
He's about halfway there. He's nowhere close to home right now, being Columbus, and nowhere close to the playoffs either, because the only thing they're close to right now is an 18.5% chance of getting Connor Bedard in June.
Yeah, and here one team, I talked about them earlier. Like Vancouver Canucks, I think they did the Horvat trade early, Huss, not to get ahead of the deadline and it's hard to work on. You hear the insiders. So hard to work on 4 different deals at once if you're Vancouver. They're trying to trade Shen and Besser, blah, blah, blah. They're trying to do the tank early. I mean, they're bringing in their 4th string goalie up from the AHL. I mean, great job at tanking if you're Vancouver. And they've lost 3 in a row now, really increasing their odds for that number 1 pick as we bring up the lottery simulator. I got to get a mouse pad here, but where is it? Here it is, Huss. This is the lottery simulator.
Oh, yeah. Let's see if Columbus gets it. You can sim it once today.
Who was it here? Oh, I was talking. Okay, you were away. I was talking with Jay Zawoski from CGA or CHGO YouTube, and he was saying that they try to get set a goal for likes, and then they do the lottery simulator. So yeah, 10 more likes in the next 5 minutes, and we'll do. So if you want us to do the lottery simulator, yeah, hit the thumbs up. But here it is. Columbus just got it. And they're playing the Jets tonight.
That's
25.
it. Okay, so that's their win tonight. You guys, they can win the draft lottery, and the Jets can hopefully win this game tonight. Hey, just one other Jet note. We were talking about the Moose and Hark doing his thing, getting 2 goals last night. Axel Jonsson-Fjällby. It started off so great in the Western Hockey League for Chaz Lucius. Then he had the shoulder injury. He's out for the year. Brad Lambert, after finally getting into the lineup after whatever they had to figure out visa-wise, is absolutely tearing it up right now with the Seattle Thunderbirds. Had a big winner on Valentine's Day for his club right now, and it does seem like exactly what the Jets had hoped was going to happen, Remo, with Lambert going to playing in the Western Hockey League, junior hockey, maybe getting some real confidence and putting up some big numbers, is exactly what's happening right now in Seattle.
Yeah, I got his player card here on WHL. He's played 9 games, 7 goals, 7 assists, 14 points. So Brad Lambert, and I see people talking about him in chat. We saw the speed that he has, and nice to see him healthy, playing games, scoring points. That's a 1.56 points per game average, Hustler. So we'll keep an eye on Seattle Thunderbirds of the WHL when the playoffs come, and I don't know, maybe they will have a matchup with the Ice in the final. We'll have to wait and see.
Listen, those are the top 2 teams right now in each conference, so it wouldn't at all surprise me if it is an Ice T-Birds final. Of course, in the Western Hockey League, with the winner taking on the Mem Cup teams at the event a little bit later on. Hey, and just one more thing before we go, Remo. I saw you noticed. We mentioned the passing of Winnipeg native, longtime hockey player and coach Paul Gerard. Tim McCarver.
I just saw that during the show that Tim McCarver passed away. And he was a guy, he was on your TV for every big baseball game, him and Joe Buck for so long. He played 21 years in majors. That's a big one. All-star catcher. 81, Tim McCarver gone today.
He was a giant. An incredible player with a long career as a player. But, my generation and yours, this is a guy that was synonymous with the biggest games in baseball on the biggest stage. He was a mainstay in that booth, the number 1 booth for so long. And obviously we, if you just go to YouTube or Twitter right now and just Google or put in Tim McCarver, there's some amazing highlights of some of his greatest calls. And he had a real unique personality to him, was not afraid to tell it like it is. I think that's part of the reason why he was so popular and was such a great foil to Joe Buck, as he spent so many times in the booth with Joe.
Yeah, them on Fox. Yeah, all the big games. Just type his name in. The one, 2001 World Series, but also the 2011 World Series, that Game 6 where David Freese had the big home runs. That game, I remember watching that game. That was wild. So, I also remember who he's big during the home run chase with Mark McGuire and Sammy Sosa. I'm young, so I remember him as a broadcaster more than a player. But I saw that, I was like, oh man, Tim McCarver, and he had been, retired for a couple years now, and John Smoltz took over. So, although Joe Buck doesn't even do baseball anymore, he's strictly football now with ESPN.
Monday Night Football guy with it. But anyways, RIP to Tim McCarver. Unfortunately, a couple of sad passings in the world of sports today. All right, gang, we'll get out so we can get this pod loaded up and people can get their WST fix before 6 o'clock puck drop tonight in Columbus. Tomorrow, though, we'll have a big show. Lots of Jets news to talk about as the team will be off for a couple days, heading into 3 and 4 in New York City. Ken Weeb will join us from NYC, Scotty Billick as well, and we'll also have the Hacksaw pop by to get his thoughts on the Super Bowl that was passed, some big coaching news, and a look ahead to the offseason in the NFL, and I'm sure some of the other big stories in the world of sports. Big thanks to Dan Fink, who joined us today. Great stuff with Ted Wyman and Brandon Rewucki. Enjoy the game tonight. Thanks to all of our sponsors, folks. Stay warm, and we'll see you tomorrow to tee up the very busy weekend at 1 o'clock live on YouTube on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Don't forget, winnipegsportstalk.com/contest if you want to win tickets to Sunday's Dylan Sandberg bobblehead night for the Manitoba Moose. Enjoy tonight's game. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Oh my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.